What's up? This is the Dark Pixel Podcast. My name's Kason.
My name's Landon.
We are Dark Pixel. There's not someone missing. This is how it's always been. If any of you remember there being a third person, part of the Dark Pixel team, you are misremembering and you have faulty memory.
It's like the Berenstain Bears and the Berenstain Bears.
The whole Mandela effect.
There you go.
So, because a lot of people think that he died just recently, but he actually died like 30 years ago, right?
Who? Wait, Nelson Mandela?
Anyways, so that is the joke of the Mandela effect, actually.
Right.
We got some sick topics. PlayStation conference happened. Mike was way into that. Oh, okay, all right. Mike is missing.
It's true. He exists.
We miss him dearly, especially right now, because he had a family emergency. Otherwise, he would totally be here. He was all over this PlayStation conference. Me and Landon were a little more passive in that area, unfortunately, because we got to talk about it now because some pretty important stuff happened there. But we're going to go over that as best as we can. Then we're going to go over the Nintendo Direct from last week. Phil Spencer said some things about 4K being the future of gaming, and Press Play to Start wants us to address whether 60 frames per second or 4K should be kind of the goal. We've got some stuff about, like, oh, here's one. Velhart's asking if we could add special DLC episode or expansion to any game, what would it be? Christopher Gwynn wants to know if we have trouble playing as a character with radically different values or ethics from ourselves. That is a very interesting question. And then the last one is from Drake Chandler, saying, as Final Fantasy fans, why didn't we all follow him?
Sakaguchi.
Hironobu Sakaguchi. Why didn't we all follow that dude to Mistwalker? How come he's making these good games that are critically acclaimed, and Square Enix is making these Final Fantasy games that are mediocrely acclaimed, critically mediocre? And how come we're still clinging on to Final Fantasy instead of following Sakaguchi to wherever he went? So we're going to talk about all this stuff because it's very interesting.
Pretty good stuff, yeah.
So the conference.
PlayStation, it was like really late at night, our time.
I know, man.
I think it was 3 a.m. on the East Coast.
Oh, jeez. See, the Nintendo Direct was at a decent time. It started like 5 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the PlayStation conference was a different story.
Way late at night. A lot of people were hoping for like some Final Fantasy VII remake news.
Yeah, as we often hope for. It's just not.
That's also
going
to have to be like
guys.
a banned topic until something happens, and then we'll start talking about it again.
That's actually a good idea.
Like,
instead of like
talking about that,
speculating.
There's something new to talk about. Yeah, so
or the PlayStation Vita successor was supposedly going to make an appearance, according to several sources, including myself.
The PlayStation Veritas. Yeah, your own source.
My own source, my own intuition told me that it was going to happen. But that's 2018, guys. My new source just barely told me. That's coming next year. So, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, you heard it here first. We have sources for
we do.
things. We don't just...
But a lot of things people wanted to hear, they weren't addressed.
Well, and those are pretty fringe things, not like it wasn't like those things are a little more nebulous and out there in the ether. Like they're sort of like we're reaching and grasping for them, but there really wasn't like a I don't think there's a realistic chance of hearing about either of those things.
I don't think so either. I really don't.
But the PlayStation experience in December, there's a real good chance, right?
My sources tell me it's going down, guys. Sony is going to unleash everything that they've been working on. They're going to show us all of it.
If you rewind to our podcast about
it's like a month ago,
Final Fantasy VII remake events that were supposed to anyways, and I think one of the dates was like September
this was
7th or 9th,
right?
or what, and then and then there was some dates in
the
November.
Release date of Final Fantasy VII, which was just a week or two ago, and then December
didn't hit that, and then there's some November dates for, I guess, when it was released in Europe, I think.
Oh right, yeah.
So anyways, they're doing some
still holding out for that one.
Who knows? But there was, however, a Final Fantasy game that was announced, and you guys all know this by now.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy IX's on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, it was announced. It was re-announced.
Yeah.
So that's cool. You can get that game on the PlayStation 4. They've been really good about supporting their systems with, like, Final Fantasy IX specifically, and 7, and maybe 8. But Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's the PS4 has been around for like 5 years, and they're like, okay, here you go.
Does this mean, is this the first like older Final Fantasy that's been remastered or
no,
updated
7.
for the PS4?
Oh, as far as like the update, I think so for the PS4. I don't know if you can buy because Final Fantasy 7 came to Steam.
I just don't know.
A couple years
know,
ago.
Like,
let me see
the collection that was on the PS3. I just didn't know how much of that had migrated over to the PS4 already. It looks like Final Fantasy 9 is, from what I understand, some of the
it looks like Final Fantasy 7 is on PS4.
On PS4, so
which means 8 probably is too.
So you got 9, but I think they've included some of the other features like the fast forwarding and stuff that they put in the Steam version. Anyways, I've read that it's a mildly enhanced version, so not exactly the same version of Final Fantasy 9.
It's probably more like the version that came out for Android and iOS.
Where you can fast forward through stuff, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I never played it, so I don't know what you can do. I just know the graphics looked
well, that always bothers
different
me
in a kind of weird
when
way.
they bump up the resolution on like the character models because they can,
but not the
backgrounds, and then they just don't look like they mesh.
Yeah, they
as
pop
well.
like crazy.
I don't want higher resolution character than background. Like if the background's gonna roughly look low res, even if they try to upscale it, it still looks roughly low res. Just freaking keep it.
And that's why I'm such a big fan of the pixel art kind of just look. Like I'd rather have a 2D sprite that matches its background than have a 3D model, because what inevitably happens is if you play the game in HD, it smooths out those polygons, and however it may have looked when you first played it, your character's going to look really sharp if you if you add any, or if you play it in HD.
Well, yeah, and that's to say nothing of like what it would have looked like on a CRT at the time, where everything was a little more softened.
It would have, it would have looked better, worse, but it would have matched better. In my opinion, it would have looked.
I think some games, like if you go way back, like some old NES games, I think that on a CRT, it just. They were designing for a CRT.
Totally.
Anyways, that's a whole other thing. It has nothing to do with the PlayStation conference.
So there's a few things that left alive, right? And well, yeah, we just don't know a ton about it. But it made an appearance at Sony's press conference.
It's the character designer from Metal Gear.
Yes, that's right. And it's Square Enix, right? That's making that game. So that's interesting. They're kind of teaming up with other people
or whatever. They showed a hallway and some bullets go through, and then a wall blows up, and then the camera looks out there, and like this kind of futuristic-looking craft flies over, and the city's messed up in the background.
So it's the Death Stranding.
It's
counter
thing, and it's coming next year to Japan next year. So.
Japan. So what else is coming next year is freaking the new Monster Hunter, which is crazy. I thought that was going to be like holiday 2018 at the earliest, but it's January 2018. This game is done. We just found out about it a month or two ago, and it's coming out in like 4 months. No,
yeah, it's pretty quick.
That's crazy.
In a global release,
that's right.
And Monster Hunter's never done that before. So
and they're doing it for Sony.
With Sony.
not
yeah, January 26th. That's pretty. I actually like games that come out earlier in the year because it's not as crowded.
Exactly, because I miss so many good games at the end of the year because I only can buy a couple, and like 5 or 6 games come out that
when they stack them all, and they're all
2 or 3
like October releases,
and November.
Yeah, it makes it difficult, but
so that's nice. I'm getting this game. Like we're gonna be playing this game. This game is gonna be really cool.
There's some freaking hilarious. I can't remember if this. I don't think this is a monster that I've seen before in Monster Hunter. But there's this like really fluffy one with it's like a bat-looking thing with like a big fluffy like collar, kind of like a poofy collar. But it's not just like fur. It's like lamb's wool or something. I don't know how to describe it, and I can't remember what it's called. But I haven't seen any Monster Hunter that I've played before, so that one really caught my eye. I think they showed that for the first time at this conference, and they've been showing some more equipment sets and cloaks or cowls or whatever they're calling it, and looks pretty cool.
It's just shaping up to be an awesome game.
Pretty crazy. So not much. Again, we didn't watch the conference, so
sorry we read about it later. But apparently Noctis is going to be in Dissidia, so that's cool. Once again, Mike, who plays Dissidia. We
Mike
probably have a
plays
little more to
Dissidia.
say about that. We don't play Dissidia. So awesome that he's in it. I don't know why he wasn't in it already. I feel like he kind of should have already been there, but
Noctis moving. They wouldn't let
It's
him
okay.
in until they sold 10 million copies. And then Noctis was
You
like,
need to wait a
please,
year."
just release it on phones. A lot of people
There
will
you
buy it
go.
on a phone. Then I can be in Dissidia. Yeah, okay, you can be in Dissidia.
fine.
So they let him in. I don't know. There's like roughly three main character types in Dissidia, right? There's like
I actually
three
don't
different
know.
types. Wonder, anyways, from
Fighter, mage,
whatever
healer
movies.
kind of thing.
I guess that makes sense that it's like a weapon triangle, but so again, we know nothing about Dissidia. So Zone of Enders. Here's the last note here.
Zone of Enders.
Zone of Enders game I have not played. Kaysen hasn't played.
We looked at it though.
Yeah,
We watched a little bit of it. It's like
and they've got some VR stuff in there.
future. That's right. Yeah. So Zone of Enders was initially a game from like 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
That was directed by once again because we mentioned his name earlier, but the
Kojima.
Metal Gear creator, Hideo Kojima. He made this game back in like 2001, and it's getting a remaster and like this virtual reality treatment to it. And we aren't really into VR as much,
But it's
So-
the kind that could work a little better because it's like when you're piloting something. I feel like
yeah,
that works
you're
really
in
well.
it. Yeah,
You're
you're
in
not,
a
you're not
cockpit
walking.
view
You're
and
sitting
looking around. That can be pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
really
you're into
smart.
mech stuff, I wouldn't be too surprised if Left Alive weren't to also have mech things in it as well. You know, it seems to be that futuristic kind of angle. So mech people rejoice. There's no mechs in Monster Hunter though. I was about to say
That would
what
be kinda cool, actually.
That's more what's their faces territory. The game just came out this year.
Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn.
That's their
Yeah.
territory.
Mechs as Monster Hunter mechs.
So, anyways, I heard from a lot of people that stayed up and watched the conference that they were a little disappointed because they were looking for not this, apparently, but there's still some good news in here for
Yeah.
people that are into it. I guess there's still the PlayStation experience in December, but this appears to be this will be the last major.
Before all the games come out.
There's Tokyo Game Show is this week, right? So
That's big. That's the second biggest game conference in the world outside of E3.
and that's like
And they actually get a bigger attendance than E3.
right.
So
And so this PlayStation conference, I think, is a tie-in with the Tokyo Game Show. But
so we'll see if they have anything else to say.
yep, we'll see.
Apparently Bethesda is talking. I mean, they're bringing Wolfenstein 2 and Doom, as well as Skyrim to the Switch. So they're kind of coming all out in support of Nintendo here. Really good news for Nintendo. So a lot of the news that's coming out now is, very relevant to the Tokyo Game Show, including the Nintendo Direct from last week.
Yeah.
I watched the whole thing. Did you see it?
Yes.
Really? So it's nothing against Sony, but Nintendo put it at 5 p.m. I mean, I can do 5 p.m. I can't do 5 a.m. That's a whole different ball game there. So anyways, was able to catch the Nintendo Direct. Focused on like three main things. This Project Octopath Traveler, which Mike put up a video a couple days ago. You should watch it because we were very impressed by that game. Project Octopath is like going to be my favorite game that comes out for the Switch for the next year.
Kaysen played the crap out of it.
I played it. I played both. I beat not Rosemary, Primrose story and Ulbricht's story, and I mean, I didn't beat the story. I got as far as the demo would allow me to go. Pretty extensive demo, like multiple hours of gameplay here. It's not just small and short. And even after they flash the thing on screen that's like, buy the game, you played the demo, you can click out of it and then just keep going. Like you can, you can just keep running around and like traveling. You can even go to like the next town over.
Oh,
and you can like, I don't know. It's an extensive demo, guys. Like there's a lot here, and the art style is freaking ridiculously cool. It is so good.
They're making really good use of lighting effects in battle.
Yeah.
Like even I was seeing the trailers. It's like Corsair showing the coolest spells and stuff. But like the way that you do that power up thing, even just one powered up level does a really cool kind of display.
Yeah,
like,
and your dude's like when the camera's shaking, and when you attack an enemy and you destroy it, it like blows them away.
You got a chromatic
so cool.
aberration that just like everything's ripping apart space time.
In fact, you mentioned the chromatic aberration. There's several aspects of Project Octopath's like aesthetic, like the way that it's presented, that I find super interesting. But in the first one is the heavy vignette that's on everything.
There's a really heavy vignette.
It's really heavy.
That
I didn't mind it though. In most games, I mind it, but this game, I have a theory. I have an idea on the look they were going for, like why they did it the way they did it. Because they also have like a tilt shift effect going on, right?
Yeah.
The depth of field is just like massive. It's insane, and it makes our characters look really small.
Yeah.
So essentially, it feels to me as though it's being presented as like a
shadow box.
like a puppet play or something, like a shadow box kind of thing, where you're there. The things are actually there. They're really small. They're the size of what you're actually seeing on the television, and this is kind of like a little finger puppet play that's going on in front of you. Obviously, way cooler than that, but it looks like that. That seems to be like the look they were gunning for. That would actually be fun. It would fit in an RPG really well, actually.
Well, I mean, that's kind of Paper Mario a little bit, and then this makes me think of Super Mario Bros. 3, where it was all like on a stage and they had the curtain fall.
Oh yeah,
everything was like it had been built by screws and wood. And everything.
That was funny. Yeah. I liked the way that it was Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. The way that they did the whole stage,
because the battles were on a stage.
Right? And you got people watching, and the Goombas are rooting against you, and the Toads are rooting for you, and you've got to cater to the audience. And sometimes like a light would fall from, and it could hit you, it could hit the enemy, and you'd have to or some backstage element would like fall forward.
Oh my gosh,
it was so usually after like if you use like a POW block or something that really shakes everything, something like that would sometimes happen. And that was really cool. And so without the audience factor, Project Octopath seems to be gearing for like a stage type presentation, because also think about it, you can't rotate the camera.
No,
it is fixed. You should be able to rotate the camera given other games that use a similar like look and style. This one you can't. You are looking at it dead on, but it still has like such an awesome feel. I don't know, I don't mind it,
because they're calling it 2D HD, or HD 2D. I don't remember which, but
it's 2.5D is what it actually
is. It works really well. Like in the old 16-bit era games, you could sometimes maybe walk behind the roof of a building or something, but you couldn't see what was back there. They would hide secrets and crap sometimes. If you knew there was a chest behind something, but oftentimes you only had a little bit, and you couldn't really go anywhere you wanted. And it feels like this is nailing that kind of feel, like gameplay wise, like as you're traversing areas, and you can't rotate the camera and be like, oh, there's a guy back here.
What's here? Totally.
I was gonna say the vignette, I felt like,
I thought that was a light. So anyways, going with my stage thing,
okay,
it's like a spotlight on the stage. That's the continue with what you're saying.
The knight, his name is Ulbrich.
Ulbrich.
Okay, I felt like playing, because I just played Ulbrich for like, I don't know, like an hour or something, and in that first village as Ulbrich, there was a corner that was so vignetted and so dark that it was almost like, to me, it was almost like not totally blacked out, but it was just like way too dark, and it was towards the bottom left corner. And as I traveled over there, obviously the vignette moves with the camera, and so it didn't stay that dark. But I almost wonder if they're using the vignette to direct you, because there wasn't really anything to do in that dark corner. Right, and like like we know this, like a principle of color correction and color grading for like movies is like you'll use vignettes to draw the eye where you want people to look.
You don't just put a blanket vignette over everything.
Not just over everything.
Shape it and you're
using it to draw the eye. You're using it purposefully. Amateur filmmakers, you'll see them use it purposelessly. It's just there because that's what you do, right?
Right. Put a vignette on.
Yeah, and so
it's like an Instagram filter.
Yeah, it is. Somebody who doesn't quite know what they're doing with
exactly.
And so I wondered if they're using it as a tool for like a direction type tool.
I would wonder. I mean,
in the game, I don't know. It might be given too much credit, but I felt like in that scenario that it was like, I shouldn't be going down here. I should be going up here. But that's really dark down there, and there is not really anything to do there.
Right. I tried to go everywhere I could go, but it's true. Some places were really dark.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the cave and you're holding the lantern, which was super cool, by the way. Oh, okay. Another whole, like, this is adding to my whole idea that this is meant to look like a small stage. But when you're holding the lantern, and you've got like your shadow going, even if the lantern isn't really on the right spot, the shadow's always going the same way. The shadow's going as though there's a light source above the camera that is, or maybe even below the camera in the cave, and it's projecting his shadow up on the wall, even though the lamp he's holding isn't necessarily, it's like in front of him or something, but his shadow's still going back.
I see.
Like it's looking similar to the effect that I do in my dark history videos, where I've got the characters in the foreground and then there's the shadow going back and it's kind of flickering, and there's like that feeling of, oh, this is kind of like a presentation kind of thing, like with little hand puppets.
They rip you off.
It's kind of that thing. Yeah. I wonder if they did actually. Oh man, I should sue.
They're like, let's make a real dark story. Who knows dark stories?
Oh,
dark pixel
history.
Oh, that's a dark history. Like, oh,
there you go.
This looks good.
I take full credit, full responsibility.
It's a cool look though. It's really unique,
awesome.
and I think it works.
It's the coolest looking game.
Like, it's pretty extreme.
Very. And they went over.
Yeah,
over,
like
over.
the depth of field is kind of bonkers a little bit. Like,
but if you think of it as tilt shift more, it's a tilt shift game. Like that makes it okay for me. You know.
I did notice in the boot up it says it's running Unreal Engine.
Yes,
so
Unreal 4.
So they're definitely taking advantage of all the lighting effects.
Yeah, because the atmospherics and the particle effects, really, really top notch. And Unreal does that extremely well.
Yeah, so I was really impressed.
I was surprised, though. This game, Unreal seemed a bit overkill for what I was looking at, you know? But obviously they're going for, this is a 2D presentation, but it is in, like, a real world, you know, even though it's these little tiny
there's a lot of bloom
things.
There's
lots of bloom.
Yeah, it's so the look on the like the map, I guess you would call it, when you're on the paper map and you move around that's really my gosh, you got the clock thing spinning around the top. It's just designed like so well, and it carries over, I think, that really cool feeling from older
games. Yeah, it did that so well for me. I just can't believe it.
And
so excited.
The voice acting, I was actually pretty impressed with Ulbricht's.
The main characters did well.
Parts, yeah.
And then the main villains did well for both stories.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the side characters that were kind of like, okay.
I didn't like I didn't like where the voices sat with the mix with the music.
Oh, me neither.
Background music was a little too powerful, and it was a little hard to hear what people were saying. It doesn't matter because you can read it, but
it's still just weird. It kind of takes you out a little.
I have to say, okay, so the more recent Persona games do this too, but where there aren't voice acted parts, they'll still have a voice acted something.
Right,
you know,
like
really?
Breath of the Wild does this,
Breath of the Wild does it in a way that I appreciate, because they're more just grunts and sounds. Of like,
they're not saying words.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Instead of being, well. Or, you know, and I can't remember, I played it like the day this went up, so it's actually been a week now.
Okay.
But they had a few where it's like, it always matches the tone of what the text is. But and I feel like the Persona games generally do this pretty well. They'll have them say something that doesn't take your mind two places. You're not hearing something, but then like reading something. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's a little bit like, I don't need that. In Breath of the Wild, it works because there are no words.
It's true. I agree, actually. I agree.
But when it's a word, if it's a very short thing, it works. If it's a little bit longer, I would rather not have it, to be honest. Just like as a personal
I'd agree with
touch.
that.
It wouldn't like ruin the game for me, but if I'm just reading it, I don't feel like it adds. I feel like it takes away more than it adds in that regard. But okay, so I didn't get to play Primroses, which, by the way, is not a Hunger Games name.
Well, Primrose is a word. Well,
right. Oh,
outside of
Prim.
either
Do they
of
call
those.
her Prim?
Prim
in Hunger Games.
She is Primrose.
She's in the first.
Her name is Primrose.
Primrose.
Yeah, I thought of that too.
Because
I was like, huh. And especially, well, no spoilers here, but
okay.
That could clue you into certain things,
some information,
possibly. Yeah.
So you played Primroses.
I did. It was cool because it wasn't so just combat centric.
Right.
When you're Ulbrich, it's like, oh, you're challenging all the townsfolk to
which
duels.
is a little
crazy.
Weird. I'm curious to see what the other people's special abilities are going to be. But Ulbrich's, after a while, it kills it a little bit, because I liked it in that it was funny, but I don't know if it's supposed to be that funny.
No, because when you beat the dudes, they're literally like stars over their head.
And they're like, thanks for teaching me how to fight.
It's like, you just jacked this guy real bad. He's on your side and you messed him up.
Especially when you fight them, and if you finish him off with, like, if you powered up like 4 times to the match and you're like Super Saiyan, and and they like, and then it comes back and they're laying on the ground like, thanks, man. It It was always just a little ridiculous.
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh,
funny.
what did I just do? Or you could fight people. It's like I shouldn't be fighting this person. Like fighting the town guard. It was like, all right, yeah,
gotta train him up.
Let's train these guys. Let's show them what's what. But yeah, anyways, oh man. But I tried fighting that one dude that's guarding that like little hut way too early on. I got my butt freaking kicked. I should have come back to fight that guy.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I actually don't. But
the guy who's guarding in his first town. To the left side.
To the left. Okay,
he's guarding a door, and it's cool that they're like NPCs. They're like, okay, ordinarily in RPGs, this will be a plot device type thing where like you can't go this way because this guy's in your way. It's like there's Snorlax in my way, and I need to get Snorlax out of my way to keep going that way. And it's fun to include that in a way that's not just reliant on the overall plot, but more reliant on like, hey, if you duel this guy, like he can move out of your way,
he can move, and
then you could get something cool.
You know what's funny? I actually didn't do that because I stopped dueling people after the first two because I, like you, and this may actually play into one of the questions we're going to talk about a little bit later in the podcast, but I didn't want to be doing that. Yeah, I didn't want to go around challenging people to duels and literally jacking them. Like, what if we got attacked and I just fought all of our guardsmen?
I know,
they're out of commission. So I was like, I level, because they have random encounters. Random encounters are back in this game. If you want to level grind, you go and do that. You don't have to fight the townspeople. But now that you're talking about it, I'm like, wow, that actually was a game mechanic that could have led towards me being able to do more that I didn't actually do because I felt conflicted about it.
I feel like that guy, he's like a 4-star because you get to choose if you want to fight him.
And you see
show their star rating
too.
He's the only guy in the first town that's not a 1-star. And so he's like a 4-star. And so I was like, dude, I can do this. I had saved a bunch of grapes or whatever you heal with. And so I was like gonna fight him, and I used all my grapes and I got wiped out. Crap. I got pretty close to beating him, but I hadn't gone anywhere yet. And so I was like, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have. But I didn't really care, so I saved my game anyways. I would have ordinarily gone back and reloaded a save, so I didn't lose all my consumable items. But anyways, I think he's hiding something I think he's hiding something pretty good. The other dudes were hiding like a grape or whatever, just like a potion or something. So there's probably people that are maxed out that are hiding really cool items or whatever. But okay, so yeah, Primrose, she has a different thing altogether.
Whole different, yeah. And you like lure people, but once you leave the town, you're still just random encounters. You still just fight people, right?
So she's.
But in order to get the plot to move forward with Ulbrich, it's fighting. With her, moving the plot forward is not fighting. It is luring people and attracting people to different places. Specifically, one certain person to one specific place. But her story was really interesting, and I really liked it. Like they show kind of her prologue and like her backstory, and then you come to where she is now, and I feel like you get to know her pretty well, like as a character, as a person, and you have some pretty good understanding for where she's at, what she's doing. Whereas with Ulbrich, you kind of get it.
His was a little more cliche.
Oh, exactly.
Like, I've seen this before.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, fine, you need to. You lost your honor and you maybe want revenge. Like,
and now no one knows how sick you are. Except they know you protect the village.
Yeah. But then for this girl, it's more like there's some like deep issues here that have led her down this path to where she's in this awful place. But she, like, when the time comes, she knows what she needs to do. It's just crazy. So you got to play this game. If you guys have a Switch, download Project Octopath Demo. You won't regret it. If you're any fan of the 90s RPG aesthetic, freaking play it because it's really cool. And if you don't like it, whatever. It's like an hour. So don't yell at me.
The game it reminded me of the most, in some regards, was Seiken Densetsu 3.
Okay, sure.
Because you got all these different characters you could choose, so you want to start out
initially.
True. And,
yeah.
And at least to some extent, they have their own paths leading into the main path, like later in the game,
which is the idea of this game. I think they all kind of converge at some future point.
I think it's funny. Can we talk about the name Project Octopath Traveler?
No, it is a working title. They have said it's not the real name.
And that's what's funny to me
is
they're like
descriptive.
We know this is weird. Like by saying like working title, who does that though? Really? Like who does it? Who's like, here's what we're calling this game, but we're not really sure. I'm trying to think of other games where they've announced it. And it's fine to announce a game and then change the name later. I'm not saying you can't do that. but it's unusual to announce a game and be like, get ready for it to change. We're just not really sure what's going to change.
Yeah, we just don't know. We haven't talked to our marketing team yet.
Yeah, it's just if you're going to get people talking about it, if you're going to start driving some buzz, you usually want that name to be pretty close to what it's going to end up being, so people aren't confused. So I wouldn't be too surprised if it's still just released as Octopath Traveler.
I wouldn't either. I mean, specifically the name, I feel like there's like, especially because this is Square Enix and their naming conventions are very strange. I could see them wanting, no, the word oct has to be in the game. It has to be in the name, and that's like coming from the top down. And like call it oct something, because that sophisticated, and the way that Japanese view certain Greek and Latin words is, you know.
I do think as Square Enix names go, it makes sense though. Like, it's weird, and it sounds like borderline pretentious, but Octopath Traveler makes it sound like there's 8 different paths to travel. And
it's very descriptive. Yeah,
it's very descriptive. Instead of, like, Dissidia or, you know, Duodecim, like, it gets a little bonkers.
Something that Mike brought up in his discussion he did a couple days ago was that this is the team that made Bravely Default Flying Fairy, which is one of the worst names.
Yeah,
of all video game history.
That's pretty bad.
So Project Octopath may be the name. They may just go with that. Octopath Traveler, and that's whatever. Yeah. Not a great name, but it's descriptive. Gets the point across.
It's so weird. I don't know.
But then you lose the possibility for DLC of a 9th extra cloud. You can't put cloud in the game now.
What would 9 be?
Nanopath? No.
Nanopath?
Nuevopath?
Jeez, I don't even know. I don't know. I'm not really sure. 9-path Traveler.
In French, it's Neuf. In Spanish,
they'll just release DLC and they'll call Octopath Traveler +1. Octopath Traveler +2.
There you go. Octa plus.
Or there's Octopath Traveler, and then a subtitle, a path less traveled, and a episode whatever.
Episode prompto.
Episode prompto. There you go.
So, other than Project Octopath, the Nintendo Direct also focused heavily on Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Mario Odyssey, right? And Xenoblade Chronicles 2 looks really cool. I don't have a ton to say about it.
I don't particularly
outside of that.
It's like interesting. The music I'm hearing.
So here's something crazy. You're on like these beasts, right?
Yeah.
And they have like tunnels throughout them, and they're all crazy. And some of them are forested, and some of them are like each beast has like
biomes.
A mood kind of that the people who live on it kind of try to, you know, be part of
the merchants, and then there's the people that are more militaristic,
and then the military. And so that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And they're these massive godlike, you know, it's land. It's what they live on. The cities are on these massive mobile creatures, and there's like 10 of them or something. And that's a really interesting concept. So it's not just, oh, what am I doing? It's no, what is the thing I'm on doing, and how can I make sure my home city is like not going to get destroyed?
Right.
Very, very interesting concept.
Yeah, I like the premise.
Didn't see them going there.
It seems. I've seen a lot of people complain about the art style of the game. I've seen some people complaining, and it makes more sense because what they've shown us is that it's essentially like Persona / Pokemon / Shin Megami Tensei, where it's like you're going to collect a bunch of these spirits and use the one that works in, you know, for the scenario. And it appears that they have a variety of people who have designed those, because the main one that we've seen that was designed by Tetsuya Nomura, that the girl in red, it's like I can believe that Nomura designed that, but in the trailer they show that one get swapped out by somebody else, a character that looks to me to be designed by somebody else. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they had like
just a bunch of artists.
A bunch of different. I mean, obviously they have a bunch of different artists.
Well, but I mean,
if they have a bunch of different styles, almost.
Yeah, exactly.
That those fall under. Yeah. So that was the impression I got, anyways. But I've seen a lot of people complaining about the art style.
It does when you get close up in the characters' faces, and it's like, You know, it looks like Jimmy Neutron kind of.
I will say that's
an
not
anime Jimmy Neutron.
Jimmy Neutron. Oh my god!
It just looks weird. I mean, and I would say it looks the most like, was it Gundam Seed or Gundam Wing? I can't remember which one.
One of those first ones
the
that
kid
were doing the
ones.
CG.
Yeah, when they
stuff.
started with CG, and it was like the 10-year-old kid with parachute shorts.
I can't remember.
Like those massive parachute shorts.
That was a long time ago.
This kind of looks like that, and that's pretty cheesy. That's pretty weird. But I actually do like, anime art style, and
well,
I don't mind it. I like more cartoony looks. Like, I think it's fine.
It's not what's keeping me from playing the game.
No.
Like I'm sure
wouldn't
there's
keep
people
me
out there
from
that
it
don't
either.
want to touch the game because of that. But
Right.
yeah, so
Every game's got to be serious, man. Got to be serious.
the voice acting. Okay,
Yeah.
so like Breath of the Wild's voice acting. Most of it is not good.
Yes. This is correct.
The voice acting I heard in, for example, Octopath Traveler, most of it I thought was good. Of what I heard, I only heard some.
No, and
stuff.
it's for the majority of what you hear, because you're hearing the mainer characters. Then they're good.
Most of that I thought was pretty good,
Yeah.
and I was thinking, like, wait a minute, what was their budget for voice acting on this obviously smaller game?
Yeah, it's 16-bit looking game. Yeah.
And then you've got like a Xenoblade, where it's like you had to have had a bigger, or Zelda, where there's not
they just didn't allocate the budget towards localization.
It's got to be a priorities thing. They just don't care that much,
which is a shame. But.
Like Zelda is a flagship title for Nintendo.
Yes,
so you would expect
they spend
whatever they do to be the best, right?
Tens of millions.
If there's something that's not the best in it, then people are going to complain.
Yeah.
Whether that be like if there's something wrong with the graphics or the gameplay or the music or something. Like in the past, I know people have complained about like not having a fully orchestrated soundtrack versus like a synthesized soundtrack. But like the voice acting, you can't really skimp on voice acting and get the same result. To me, if you're going to skimp on voice acting,
don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah,
cut it out. Or do Animal Crossing voices or something.
Or like Banjo-Kazooie, just like
yeah,
that's great.
But I don't know. I wasn't impressed with the voice acting that I heard in this. It all felt
me too.
overacted, which is what
very
most
much
of that
so.
stuff comes across as. I have to say, I feel like the average JRPG does not have good voice acting in English.
Ooh, I gotta say though, I finished Final Fantasy 12. Man, that really does have good voice acting and really good localization, except for Vaughn and Penella, which is unfortunate because Vaughn is like I'm saying this with a grain of salt.
I can say Quasimodo.
He's the main character, main character.
Right.
But not really. But he's the one you more or less follow throughout the story. But him and Penella are the bad voice actors, right? And then everyone else in Final Fantasy 12 was really, really well acted.
Yeah.
Like way better than Final Fantasy 10, way better than 13, better than 15. 15 was getting there, but anyways, it's crazy. But for some reason, Final Fantasy 10 didn't have great voice acting. Final Fantasy 12 had phenomenal voice acting. Final Fantasy 13 didn't have very good voice acting. I mean, it did at parts, I guess. Final Fantasy 13 and 15 are comparable in that regard, but neither of them are as good as 12. But that's weird. So it's almost like the director coming into it, or maybe it's not the director, but it's just like some people emphasize it, some don't, and it like the budgets for games change, but still. Yeah.
It could be the level of seriousness, maybe, that the script calls for. That there's less characters that are over the top, and because my sense, I haven't beaten Final Fantasy 12, but my sense is there's a little more like military oriented roles, and
and they're speaking old English,
okay,
like King James English, right?
Yeah,
which
so that's
that
gonna
affects
lend
things.
its own flavor versus like somebody who has to make Prompto believable for the way he acts.
Hello, opening. I don't know how you deliver that line without.
Yeah, and it's not ripping on the voice actor for Prompto because
it's not his fault. That's just the way it was.
I think he's a good voice actor, but I think it's hard sometimes to pull off certain things.
So it just comes down to, did the company focus on, did they care about it at all? And too often the answer is no, but they wanted it anyways. They wanted it, but they didn't care if it was good. That's just, I don't know.
People feel strongly about voice acting. People feel really passionately about there seems to be a real vocal, I don't know if it's minority or not, but a real vocal group out there on YouTube and Twitter that I see that they're like,
every
I want
game
voice acting. They were so mad that Breath of the Wild wasn't going to be fully voice acted. Like, I just can't get in line with the people who are mad about that.
After hearing the voice actors, I decided that I'm glad that whole game is not fully voice acted. And nothing against the voice actors. And some of them are fine. It's just clearly that wasn't a focus of the company.
Okay. Some people were complaining about the narrator's voice, which was, I think, the voice of one of the beasts in Xenoblade 2. For the direct, he was narrating the gameplay. He's talking about, we're going to do this and that. And I was listening to him talk, and I was like, dude, this guy would have made a great King of Hyrule.
Oh, man.
I saw a lot of people complaining, saying, like, this guy sucks, and it makes me not want to play the game listening to this narrator. But I was thinking, like, this guy's way better than the guy they actually had do King of Hyrule.
You know, I agree, actually, yeah.
A guy who actually sounds like you're probably older, or at least you can pull it off.
Yeah,
instead
at least
of
you sound
getting
older.
Some dude and being like, hey, sound like really old. Like,
yeah.
All right. So that was just, that thought crossed my mind in the middle of the direct. I don't know.
Oh, that's funny. I forgot though. Yeah, the director or the voice actor, it was mostly what he was saying. He was like, he would make jokes every now and then, like, oh, but don't forget to do this. And you can't make that sound good. But everything else he delivered was fine. They just had to force in these really lame.
Yuck. Yeah,
so funny.
So it looks like a cool game overall, though. It's an interesting twist of the battle system,
and an interesting plot and setting.
You get the Pokemon Collection edition.
It's almost like World of Final Fantasy battle system, except
I've never been like big into Xenoblade's battle system. It's never like looked. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but it just never looked very interesting to me. I've watched Mike play it quite a few times, and I'm just kind of like, it's too MMO to me in feeling, and I feel like
I see that
just doesn't strike a chord with me for whatever reason. So, so everyone was kind of expecting like maybe there would be a surprise in this Nintendo Direct. And
I was. What did I think? Bethesda was going to announce something.
Oh, right.
Oh well, didn't happen.
So nothing too surprising here.
My sources.
But, I thought for sure we'd see something about Animal Crossing because we just passed the 15-year anniversary of the first Animal Crossing. 15 years. Ooh. And so I figured that would have been good timing for an Animal Crossing mobile announcement. But you know what? I figure at this point we need to stop looking at anniversaries at all for anything ever.
When the game's done, it'll be shown.
That's not
whether it coincides with an anniversary or not.
Yeah. I'm still confident we're getting an Animal Crossing mobile game by the end of this year.
Okay, wow.
Because it was supposed to be this spring, and I don't think they would delay it a full year. But
Animal Crossing's made for phones, man.
It really is.
It's one I would actually enjoy.
It really is. So, but yeah, Mario Odyssey, and they showed a few new worlds in Mario Odyssey, which was cool.
Yeah, they showed Mario with his shirt off,
and everyone went nuts.
For some reason, people were upset that he has nipples. Did you read any of that? Or was that a joke on Twitter?
I'm not convinced people are actually outraged about what.
Well,
I think
I don't know that they're actually mad, but people are talking about Mario's got nipples.
What the crap? What? Sora has nipples in.
Because you see him with Little Mermaid. Yeah, he's got his shirt off.
So what are you gonna do?
What's wrong with that? Moana, though, the Maui.
He doesn't have nipples?
No nipples.
Oh, really?
None of the men...
I haven't seen Moana yet.
In Moana had nipples. I found that a very interesting choice. Yeah.
I suppose that could be a high point of contrast. It's distracting.
It's true.
It's like
everyone's
the face.
That's true. That's a good point. I didn't even think about it that way.
Does Hercules have nipples? He does, because it twirls.
Yeah, because it's...
Oh, but it's more on his...
That's his chest.
Do you ever see him without his armor on?
You do. I swear you see him with...
You gotta look up Hercules topless.
Anyways, we'll look into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mario Odyssey. I know there's not too much to talk about there because they didn't show much more. Although people have been showing comparisons from the E3 trailer versus what we saw now, and the models have been updated quite extensively. Lighting looks better. The textures are way better. Everything.
They've added these hats into scenes that didn't have the hats, like floating around.
Yeah.
Princess Peach's crown thing that also needs to be rescued, which is like for the feminists that are already upset about the scenario, they've made it doubly. It's not just she needs to be rescued; her and another female object needs to be rescued by another male object.
if Nintendo just makes a Sheik-centered Zelda game, all will be forgiven.
That would be so cool.
Although there are people who are saying that like Sheik is actually like transgender. She is a boy when Zelda is Sheik, because she thinks she's a. Who
Does
knows
she
what
think she's a boy?
I know, that's a joke. That's a hilarious inference that people draw.
Right.
But there's a whole debate amongst the community as to whether Sheik is a boy or a girl, and it all stems on the mental transgender idea.
Okay.
And so, if Nintendo does finally make a Sheik-centric like Zelda game, it's people would still argue that that's still a boy. It's still not a girl. You still don't have your strong female hero.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
She's pretending to be a boy. She's a boy, and that's kind of modern. Like
I see what you're saying. Or she had to
ideology.
put on the guise of a male to be acceptable.
Which makes her a male in
Okay.
one of the 5 Timecodes. Anyways, it's really interesting. That was a total tangent. But point being, all will be forgiven. Feminists will be okay if Sheik shows up in a Zelda game. But who knows when that's
If
going to
Sheik shows up in Mario Odyssey,
Apparently
you can
they
control
talked
Sheik,
about
throw the
it.
hat on top of Sheik.
There you go.
Around Sheik.
Now they did it.
They showed some more of you controlling the dinosaur, which I'm really excited about.
That's
because
really
that was
cool.
freaking fun.
That's really cool.
That looks pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Coming up pretty fast. We're like a month away from that game coming out.
1 month, dude. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Well,
As an aside, Nintendo's forecast for its stock has been increased dramatically by at least one agency. They're predicting, they're saying that the Switch is going to, they believe it's selling more similar to a handheld than a home console. And those follow different trends. And as a home console, they're projecting 70 million, but as a handheld, they're projecting 130 million by 2022. So they just through the roof, and Nintendo stock has been going nuts.
Crap.
And the stock price doesn't
That's
actually
insane.
matter, right? That's just a reflection of the attitudes of investors,
Right.
not the truth of what's going on the ground. We saw that with Pokemon Go. It was kind of
totally.
obvious,
The inflated stock, and it
yes.
came right back down after
Yeah,
that
once
month.
everyone got their head straight. Sometimes people are
Totally.
just riding a trend, though.
Exactly.
They
It's
know
a
it's not
fad.
going to go forever, but they're trying
Right.
to capitalize on it while they think they have some momentum. But we don't need to get into the trading theory or any of that.
No, it's true.
But I thought that was interesting. Pretty high forecast. If the Switch sells over 100 million,
Holy crap.
sheesh.
Even over 70 would be awesome, but
Yeah.
over 100 would
So-
be crazy. What did the PS2 sell? 150, something like that?
Gosh,
Or the DS? Which one's the highest
earlier
selling?
this
DS
year-
or the PS2 is the
earlier
highest?
this- I think the PS2 is number one.
Number one?
But
So like
earlier this year, I
150,
knew
I
all those
swear.
numbers like this spring.
Because you made that
and
video.
I can't remember
yeah.
any of them.
I
now.
swear it's 150.
It's PS2 and DS though. Yeah, globally.
So it won't quite reach there, which would be insane if it did.
Well, because those were so not both.
Those
That
were
would be more
perfect for
common
their
than PS2, but the
time.
DS was so much cheaper.
Oh, it was, yeah. That's
Way
true.
cheaper. So, anyways.
All right, let's move on. Phil Spencer apparently says 4K is the future of gaming, which he didn't say this, okay? He didn't say this, but it appears people have been given the impression that 60 frames per second is maybe less important, and that 4K is where they're going for, and if the frame rate goes down, so be it, we got 4K, right?
Right.
So, press play to start, asking the question. It seems that other companies are prioritizing 4K and higher graphics over frame rate. I want to know what your thoughts are on this and where you stand on the 4K versus 60 FPS debate. We actually did talk about this a month or two ago. I believe we're all of a similar opinion. Frame rate is more important. But it kind of depends on the game, right? If you're playing a first-person shooter, if you're playing a multiplayer game, if you're playing online, if you're playing a fighting game, you have to have that 60 frames per second. You have to. It's just like integral to just reaction times, and everything needs to move a certain way. Otherwise, you're at a disadvantage. Even if it's like you may not be able to measure how long it took you because you missed that in-between frame versus somebody else to react, there is a measurable impact. It's just you may not notice it, but it's there. Whereas maybe if you're playing a game that's like Journey or Myst, or
Mist does not need
Esther, what's it called? Esther, what's that game?
Oh, Dear Esther.
Dear Esther, that's it, Dear Esther. Anyways, or games like that, LA Noire, all of a sudden it's like, hey, you don't need that. You don't need that reaction time. No one else is playing with you. All of a sudden, 30 frames per second is fine, and you can bump that up to 4K. What I maybe don't like as much about someone like Phil Spencer saying, hey, let's go 4K, and kind of just ignoring 60 FPS up for the time being is that it seems kind of blanket. It doesn't seem like, hey, some games should prioritize 4K over 30 over 60, and some games should prioritize 60 over 4K. It's more like just kind of picking one, and the others kind of have to follow suit. I don't think games like Overwatch should be gunning for 4K. You should, I mean, you've got to get the core gameplay down first. You've got to get your frame rate smooth. And if some people can run it at 4K, that's wonderful. But that's secondary. That should by no means be enforced by the console company saying, hey, make this game run at 4K and sacrifice frame rate. If that's happening, that's bad, and they'll pay for it later.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that's happening, although Sony is emphasizing 4K. I believe they do want people to get 4K running on their PS4 Pro, but I don't know that, I don't know, people can get around that without having to actually, sacrifice FPS at the moment. Hopefully that continues.
It's interesting when you compare the two things as just strictly as numbers. So 4K represents a resolution that theoretically is always going to continue to increase, or at least till we get to a point of diminishing marginal returns, right?
Right,
like,
8K.
Which I would argue 4K is there, but
I would say it's pretty dang close.
This is severely diminishing returns beyond 4K. You could conceivably, depending on how close you are to your monitor, see a difference at, up to a certain point. But we've moved forward in resolution. Boom, 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 boom. Frame rate has been something, like you're saying, subject to what was necessary. Like Ocarina of Time, I think was like 15
20
frames per second.
Yeah, it was low.
Pretty low, like, jarring.
I didn't care. I didn't care.
It didn't make anybody say this isn't a great game at that point in time.
Right. They
were balancing things, and so it's that seesaw, right? So it's like what Case is saying. What do you care about? And not everyone cares about the same things, and that's the underlying problem.
Exactly,
it's the underlying problem. What you care about should consolidate, however, pretty narrowly over specific genres. Though, like you're saying, like an FPS is going to really, like a first-person shooter FPS, not frames per second FPS. A first-person shooter will benefit very greatly from 60 frames per second because it's more perceptible. Whereas and
it's less dizzying when you're first-person looking around. 30 FPS just can be a little too choppy.
Yeah,
sometimes.
It's true. Higher frame rates can keep people from getting motion sick. And third-person action occasionally can actually do okay with lower frame rates than a lot of like first-person action. But like, for example, like Splatoon 2, when you're in the plaza where the shops are and all that stuff, where all the Miiverse posts are, I don't even know what to call those anymore. And that runs at 30 frames per second. But the main game, every other mode, everything else runs at 60 frames per second. So you know that they scaled it back there so that they could maybe spice up how cool that area looked.
Yeah,
or how many characters were in the scene at once or whatever.
Really smart, actually.
So it's just a resources game of what you're balancing. And so, like, the only reason, well, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons people are going to push for 4K is because it's going to help your marketing efforts. There was a good article I saw going around this last week that was saying, like, there's no difference between game design and game marketing. And that's a super controversial thing, and I can already hear people typing right now. But this guy's arguing there's no difference between game design and game marketing, where what you're designing is your selling point of your game. Like, what do you do in this game and how do you do it? That should coincide with like how you're going to let people know like what's cool about your game. Obviously, like that's his school of thought, and I'm sure he's open to people who think otherwise. But if 4K is what you want to use as a marketing term because your like marketing team is like, dude, people are looking up 4K like crazy. People aren't looking up 60 FPS.
That's true.
People aren't looking that up. People looking up 4K. They bought their 4K TV. They're looking up what's in 4K.
No one has a 60 FPS TV. Actually, they do, but they don't know it.
They do.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
Although they do push that with the motion smoothing.
What do they call it? 60 hertz, and then it
120
up to 120,
and then even higher. But I can't. But on the floor, they'll usually have motion smoothing turned on, and it bumps things to 60. Even regular television.
It sucks. Turn it off. If you have it on your TV, turn it off. Do it now.
It's not so great.
No, it's not.
60 frames per second movies are an abomination.
They're
and
bad.
I was just talking to Krista about this today. But we were watching. We were in a lobby at the doctor's office, and we were watching. They had Pocahontas up on this TV, and they had motion smoothing turned on, and it made Pocahontas look really weird because it's like animated stuff is usually lower than 24 frames per second.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
it's usually pretty low. So it's like
stop motion stuff is like 10 or 15.
And if
animated, it's like 20.
If you're talking anime could be like 8 frames per second.
Oh gosh,
sometimes.
and you wouldn't know.
But like Disney had this like I think they went up to 18 frames per second sometimes, and that was Osamu Tezuka who brought the standard for anime in where he's like, we can get away with like, I don't know what it was, 8
minimal,
to 10 frames per second.
Basically nothing.
Anyways, that's a whole sidetrack, but I was watching it and it was like, it was motion smoothing was turned on, 60 frames per second, Pocahontas, and I was just like, what the heck? And I was like, can you see that? And she was like, I can't see it. I don't know what you're seeing. And I keep trying to point it out to her.
Oh, it's
She's
funny.
like, I can't see it.
If she had them both on, one with it on, one with it off, I'm sure she could tell.
There's a website, and I can't remember what it's called, but you just Google 50 frame per second visualization, or 60 frame per second visualization, and they'll show you there's a ball moving back and forth on your screen at different frame rates.
Nice.
And you can see why 60 is what people want for video games, why you can get away with lower stuff for more cinematic things, because it's not a reaction time thing. So anyways, I think the marketing is being taken into consideration when people are making games. 4K is more marketable than 60 FPS. There are people that are going to be looking for that 60 FPS, but I would guarantee you there's not the search traffic for 60 FPS as a keyword.
That's probably true.
For 4K, which is just the reality of the situation. So for me personally, I would rather things stay at 1080p for forever and just crank the frame rate up. But I think that's why it happens that way. That's just, anyway, this is a theory, but
no, that's probably true. I mean, marketing 4K it's a buzzword. It's a tag. It's a marketing.
Well, what's Sony going to do? Come out with a console and say this one can do 60 frames per second? But the other one could.
Just not as many polygons, right? But now you've got to get more technical.
The trick is, what resolution can you do 60 frames per second
exactly.
at? And then
how many millions of polygons can you render and still maintain 60 FPS?
Yeah, so, for RPGs, it freaking most of the time does not matter unless it's an action RPG.
It's
RPGs
true.
is genre, or you can get away with a really low frame rate if you have to. So, anyways, I know some people are really mad. Like Breath of the Wild, for example, had a lot of frame rate issues, which, by the way, if you weren't aware, have been mostly patched out. There is one area
they weren't hardware issues; they were optimization issues from the Wii U. Yeah,
the Lost Woods is still choppy. Whenever I go there,
there's all those trees, man.
It's still choppy.
I don't ever really go there,
but other areas are not. Well, you can sleep there for free, so I go there like all the time.
Can you?
Yeah, dude, you go.
I just go to my house. I just go to my house up in.
I guess that makes sense too. I don't know which one's closer to a shrine though. That's the thing. I was like running.
True, yeah, because the one at your house is not.
Maybe I should go to my house. Jeez, I bought a house and I don't ever sleep in my house. What the crap? Anyways, that area's still choppy, but people were upset. Some people were saying like, "This is bull crap. This game has frame rate issues, and people are giving a high score still."
Which is
anyway, some people get hung up on more technical stuff because they're more technically minded, and that's who you are. It's what you're interested in. So.
It was unfortunate. There was a patch kind of right at the beginning of Breath of the Wild, right when you come out of the cave, that was choppy, and almost every time you go through that part and the camera comes in, it would have issues rendering
on the Great Plateau.
But for the most part, that game did fine.
Yeah. So anyways, 60, and then that game's 30 FPS. And while
30.
When I go from Splatoon to Breath of the Wild, and it's jarring for the first little bit, but after a while you just get used to whatever the frame rate is. What's almost more important than anything is that whatever the frame rate is, that it's steady.
Exactly. If it drops,
sometimes you can set it to use like a variable frame rate a little bit, and in some games they'll give that option. Sometimes it'll be like a locked 30 at whatever resolution, there's a locked 60 at some decreased resolution, and then some dynamic resolution with a variable frame rate sometimes, although usually they're using dynamic resolution in all those modes. And like if you watch videos on Digital Foundry and stuff, they'll say like, this looks jacked, like a locked 30 looks better than like a variable frame rate in the 40s. 50, So, whatever it is, as long as it's consistent.
All right, thanks. Press play to start. So, next question is from Velhart. Oh, and I just want to make sure. Oh, yeah, not a problem. Okay, Velhart says, if you could add a special DLC episode or expansion to any game, what would it be? Not being like a massive fan of DLC in general, I wouldn't pick like my favorite games and like, oh, let's expand it. However, we did talk about like making a Sheik standalone game. Right?
Oh yeah,
Ocarina of Time DLC. Let me play as Sheik while she's doing whatever the fet she's doing.
whatever.
Because you never actually get to see her fight.
You kind of see her like do acrobatic stuff.
Yeah, she flips and she has like a dagger, I guess, or she's like getting ready to fight the spirit that you can't see from the well, right? But you don't. I mean, you don't actually really see it.
Yeah. Well,
and then she uses her powder to disappear, but you just don't see much. And I want to see more of that because that would be an awesome DLC. Yeah,
that would be pretty cool. Man, I'm trying to think of a game that I played where I'm just like, I need more of this, and you know, right now actually Breath of the Wild. But
well, you're getting it, dude.
You're
getting what you want.
But I just can't. Like, I want more of that world. I want more places to run around and explore. I really like exploration in games. Oh man, I liked that they added DLC for BioShock Infinite, but I honestly wanted to explore the flying cities more than like than go back to Rapture, because like I actually don't like Rapture that much as a location.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rapture's the flying city.
Are you talking about the dome?
The underwater.
The second one?
BioShock
2, right?
No, the first BioShock.
First one.
The undersea.
I can't remember what it's called.
Man, it's gonna drive me
that was so cool though. At the like towards the beginning when you're walking across the buildings, in like that glass tunnel, you see like whales.
Yeah, that
like,
was pretty cool.
In the city, that was so cool.
Oh gosh.
But then half the buildings are like leaking water.
Yeah, it is Rapture. Rapture's the underwater city.
Well, what was the city called?
New Columbia.
New Columbia. That was it.
Yeah. Okay, Rapture. Jeez. Wow, that threw me for a loop. Anyways, I don't really like Rapture that much as a location. Like, it's just too dark all the time.
It was really dark.
And I think for some reason, I don't know, this is like so freaking like nitpicky, but I just get sick of playing games that are dark all the time. I really don't like that. Like, that's one of my biggest complaints with Dark Souls. There are some good looking areas in Dark Souls that are like really cool and unique, but for the most part, it's all pretty drab and dark. The freaking
too dark.
Dark Souls.
What do you
Dark
think
Souls
of,
is too dark.
What do you think of Dark Pixel?
Dark Pixel is too dark. Right now, our background's so dark.
Actually, this is one of the darkest podcasts that we've ever done.
But anyways, I just like I get kind of sick of really, really dark settings after a while. But I can put up with it for a time. But like I don't know. Like I like comparing BioShock Infinite to the first BioShock, I would far rather continue to explore New Columbia, I think it is, than continue to explore Rapture. Just
I agree.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about that. So anyways, I want some more BioShock Infinite DLC exploring New Columbia.
That would be pretty cool.
I would say. Other than that, man, I mean...
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other games that could use a DLC. Mario RPG, because they never made a sequel, so I guess DLC is all I can ask for.
Super NES DLC.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going for like old games, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of DLC. Generally speaking, the only times that I'd be okay with DLC are games like Legend of Zelda, or things like Lord of the Rings, or stuff where it's like I just fell in love with the world.
Yes.
As opposed to the specific storyline or the specific like gameplay. It's just I want to go into the world and explore more of the world. That is where I want DLC.
I mean, that's funny because I think it's the same for me too, because I want to explore more of New Columbia.
Yeah, there you go.
Just or I want to explore more of
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild Hyrule.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting.
That's
though I was gonna say, like, you don't like TV shows that keep adding and going on and on and on.
I don't.
You kind of prefer stuff that like had a vision.
Give me the story.
Here's what we're doing, and just do it, and that's what you get, right?
Stories tend to fall apart when they just kind of keep going. Yeah.
They lose their identity a little bit, or get away from
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true. That's a good point, because that's kind of like DLC. Season 2 is DLC from Season 1. It's not, because it's not a sequel, right? A sequel is like, you know, the next movie where it's like, oh, it's been
like
a
it
year,
sounds more like a self-contained package.
Yeah, well, but a Season 2 is like, oh, we're just keeping on with the same thing, right?
I'll tell you the worst DLC ever is the Arrested Development Season 4.
Oh,
worst
God.
DLC ever.
That was the worst DLC ever. It wasn't free, because you have to have Netflix subscription.
That's true.
It wasn't even free.
I suppose you could get a free month from Netflix.
There you go. It could be free if you
Does
want.
anyone not have Netflix?
If anyone doesn't have
that
Netflix,
needs a free
use
month?
your free month in a month and watch Stranger Things, and then Stranger Things Season 2,
yeah.
which comes out like right before Halloween, I think.
That's right.
Use your free month then. Watch those
That would be a good
shows,
time.
and then you don't
And
need
then bail.
Netflix. Yeah, bail.
Also,
get out.
Pro tip: you know how you can get those cards from like the grocery stores, prepaid like Visas or whatever, and they work like a debit card.
Oh yeah.
If you get one of those, and you get only like $10 or whatever on it, like 1 month's worth of something from Netflix, right? But I don't know what it costs anymore. I have Netflix. And I don't
It
know
used
what
to be
costs.
$10. I don't know.
I think it's 11 now. I
It
don't
used
know.
to be $8. Remember?
So you sign up, and that's your card, because they won't let you sign up without a card on file.
Right.
And that's your card, and then they'll like charge it whenever they get to charge it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll try and charge it again like automatically, but it doesn't matter because there's no money on that
There's
card,
no
and that's
money.
not tied to a bank account. It's not a credit card. They can't just keep going. They have to just close your account and be done.
Wow.
So when you sign up for free services,
Do it, people.
like I almost did this. I was trying to track down the K-On! Movie in Japanese.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I ended up signing up for. I don't remember who did that. I don't think it was Funimation. It was. I can't remember who it was, but they had their own streaming service, and we ended up trying to do the. Like I didn't want to give them my card so that I would get stuck into a cycle where I'd forget I signed up for it, because you have to cancel. You have to be proactive and cancel it.
And you have to do it 10 days ahead of time, otherwise they'll charge you.
Yes. Yeah. But if you've given them a card that's just like, it's not a fake card, but it's a card that is not a bank account or anything.
Yeah.
And then they can't do anything about it. They can keep trying to charge you. It doesn't matter. You don't have to remember. Anyways, random
Great
pro
idea.
tip.
Also, if you're signing up for free things and don't want to give out your info, one more pro tip is Gorilla Mail, right?
Oh.
So Gorilla Mail, it allows you to have an email address for like 10 minutes where you can sign up for a service, you give them an email account that is a real email, and they'll send you the link to verify, and you click and confirm, and then that email account is like, this email account will self-destruct in 10 minutes. Like,
Okay.
it then disappears forever. It just gets
So
completely
you're not on someone's email
done.
list.
And yeah, so now your email is not included on a list, but you still got to click through to the link to verify that you did whatever, and then you get the free thing without, they don't have your email. So it's perfect. All right.
I sense a new podcast we need to start. Life Pro Tip podcast.
Life Pro Tips. Pro tip. Thanks, Belhart,
leave
for
your life pro tips.
your
Yeah, it's a-
question.
It's a good one, Bellart.
And if Mike was here, he'd say, I don't know, Chrono Trigger or something. Okay, next.
Sure.
Christopher Gwynn. Christopher Gwynn asks, do you ever have trouble playing as a character with radically different values or ethics from you? How important is it that that your primary avatar in a story-based game reflects your values? This is very interesting to me because you want to challenge yourself. You don't just want to put yourself into the same situations over and over.
Oh, right.
But sometimes the challenge offered to you by a game, as in the case of like Modern Warfare 2 or 3. Modern Warfare 2, was that the one? 2. Where they're like, okay, you're because Modern Warfare, it's all about killing people, right? So it's like, okay, I'm in the military, right? And I'm like special forces. That's super cool. All right, I've infiltrated the terrorists. Yeah, we're cool. Like, we're all on the same page. This is cool. All of a sudden now the terrorists want me to carry out an attack on an airport. What do I do? Like, do I do it? Do I save these people and then give up myself, and then they know I'm in the cell or I'm not part of their cell? Or do I do it so that I can keep the world from getting nuked down the line or something? And it's like a real conflict, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this game's challenging me too much. I don't want to think. I want a challenge. I want my morals and ethics and ideologies and preconceived notions. I want these things challenged. But I don't want them challenged that much. That was a really difficult thing because we were into Call of Duty back at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember going through that level, being like, I don't think any of us like killed anyone. We just went through the whole airport, and we went
because you don't have to.
You don't have to physically
shoot. It doesn't
shoot.
change what happens. Basically.
But you could turn around and kill your own people.
Oh yeah.
I don't think does the mission end.
I mean, if it was a game with a branching storyline where then, like your choice there actually changed anything, that would be interesting.
Then you do it, and now the world got nuked, and it's your fault. But did you do the right thing?
Yeah, but that is not the case in that game.
No, actually,
pretty much no matter what you do.
So you just walk through it and don't shoot anyone.
And then you get to the end. They get to the getaway vehicle. I guess I hope this isn't too spoiler. I don't know if anybody.
I remember because somebody
they know that you were not.
They knew
a Russian
because the guy kicks you out of the truck.
Kicks you out and he shoots and kills you.
And he shoots you, and it's like, I could have stopped this in the story. Not you really couldn't stop it, but in the story, it's like, oh, you could have stopped this, but you participated, and then they knew anyways, and they killed you.
I think that's part of what they did to avoid the messiness of like meeting up with that character later, or what happened to that guy. Or whether you did or did not participate. Because if you imagine a scenario where somebody didn't participate and they'd be like, we knew you were freaking boom, you know, and then they take you out. Anyways, I don't know.
It's crazy.
That's an interesting point, right?
And in that sense, I did have trouble playing as this character because the character was doing something that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go and shoot up an airport. I just wanted to go and kill Nazis or, go and no offense to anyone who's a Nazi or a descendant.
Don't want to offend any Nazis.
No, just saying. I don't want to kill Nazis, but in the video game, come on, we're in war here. We're terrorists. There you go. I wanted to go out and kill some terrorists. Okay, great. But I wasn't really comfortable with that because the character did something I didn't want him to do, and it didn't matter in the end. And it was like, okay, fine. I totally get that. Generally speaking, I do like it when the characters are different from me, just not too much, I guess. And I don't really know where to draw the line there. I don't really know when it's gone too far, but when it does go too far, I know. But I couldn't tell you, why this one went too far, but that one didn't. Like Cloud in Final Fantasy VII, he's a freaking terrorist. How many people did he kill when he blew up like 3 Mako reactors, and all for the name of like environmentalism? Like if you think about it, he's a total like alarmist Armageddon. Okay, he wasn't. He was a hired gun, right? Barrett and Tifa and all the Avalanche, right? They're a freaking terrorist organization that were going around bombing power plants of a powerful company because they were hurting the environment, right? If anyone did that today, right? Let's say some like far left, some like PETA, or maybe that's more animal rights. Greenpeace. What if Greenpeace came around and literally blew up like the freaking nuclear power plant in northern Arizona or something? It's like, or like the Hoover Dam, which generates power, or something like maybe the nuclear would make, or maybe like a coal power plant here where we live in Utah. It's like, F those guys. Now I don't have electricity at my house. Like it's just it's like they're trying to do good, but they're straight up terrorists. But I was okay with being a part of that terrorist group. I wasn't okay with being a part of Modern Warfare 2's terrorist group.
Modern Warfare 2 was rooted theoretically in our world,
right?
Where Final Fantasy was not.
And maybe that's the difference. Already had it's hard to draw those parallels when it's not your world.
And there obviously there's a tonal difference between. Okay, it's like the Avengers movies when a giant, robot gets thrown through a building or something. You didn't see anybody die, and you're just going to be like, we're just going to assume nobody died. It's all good fun. Everyone got out of the way.
Similar thing in Batman vs Superman. The assumption is no one died, and then no. In Batman Man of Steel, in Superman Man of Steel. Man of Steel. You assume no one died, right? And then in Batman vs Superman, you find out, a lot of people died.
And it was really
actually bad. A lot of people died. Your assumption was wrong.
Well, I mean, and they showed that a little bit, to be fair, in Man of Steel.
Did they?
They showed people stuck under rubble, and then like the thing was going to come down. Like they didn't show anyone die, but they showed people stuck in places where like
they
would die if you didn't do this.
And if they're there, then there's 100 other people here, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So
I gotcha.
Sometimes there's like a what would you call that? Like I guess a perspective, or like a point of view where if the more detached you are from the violence, perspective-wise, even if you're the perpetrator of it, people's brains see that differently. It's sort of like the trolley problem with throwing the switch.
Or actually, kids on the tracks and a train of people.
Right. So like there's this one I think we've talked about before where it's like you're on a speedboat and there's a guy drowning out there and you have a guy on your boat who so it's you as the driver of your speedboat and then this other guy. So in one scenario you can gun it to rescue this drowning man and you will get there in time to rescue him, but this guy will fall out of the boat and he will drown him and die himself.
Right.
So how ethical is that, right? Like, and then there's another parallel scenario where your boat won't be able to reach that guy because it's too heavy because there's two of you in the boat and that guy will drown. You can't get to him in time. So you can push this guy out and then go and then you'll get there in time and rescue that guy. How morally acceptable is that, right? These are things with like, I want to say there's no right or wrong answers because even though there's obvious, most people I think would be like, that guy's already drowning, that sucks, but like I'm not going to kill this guy who's not already in harm's way, right? But there's tests where they'll test people on like, you know, those kinds of scenarios. But what they've shown with those scenarios is that people are more opposed to pushing the guy in the water and then going to rescue the other dude versus the guy just accidentally falling out because you went so fast to get the other dude. And so you're removed from the violence a step. Like you killed this guy in one of them. And in the other one, you indirectly killed this guy.
You did something which killed the guy.
Yeah. And so the end result is identical in both those scenarios. But people will look at that and say, the one where you directly shoved that guy out is less acceptable than the one where you he just happened to fall out because you were going so fast.
Yeah.
And so I feel like similarly, like you don't see like some dude who woke up that morning and ate breakfast and kissed his wife and kids goodbye and then went to work at the Mako reactor and then is chilling doing his Homer Simpson job, whatever he does,
that's the job,
and then boom, and he gets blown up. You know what I mean? Like they don't show that.
No.
And so perspective wise, we can be like, yeah, we just did this thing. We're getting away. We're doing a good thing. Let us explain our spiel and then get away. And then from a distance, see this thing explode. And I feel like that's more acceptable.
Yeah.
To people. Because there's a way.
That's true.
There's also a level of being like gratuitous. The Modern Warfare thing is obviously super gratuitous.
Totally. And the Modern Warfare and Final Fantasy, those don't really, that's not a one-to-one comparison.
Not really, no.
Because in Modern Warfare, you're literally helping what is perceived to be the bad guys. Whereas in Final Fantasy 7,
you're a double agent in one of them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know that you're doing something wrong. With Final Fantasy 7, it's a whole different thing. They really think they're doing something good. And in some ways they are, but maybe misguided, and you know, obviously they get taken advantage of, and all this crazy stuff happens. But you know, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it is interesting to note that there are some similarities there, right? You know, and even participating in one terrorist group blowing things up versus another one shooting people. You watch the people die. You shoot them and you see that they got shot and died. In one, and the other one you don't. And either way, Cloud, I mean, he's not part of their group. He doesn't really care about Avalanche, at least at the beginning. Yeah. He doesn't care. He's just so long as they're paying him 1,000 gil or however much. And
which is so crazy.
Yeah. Well, by the end of the game. But you know, you don't even have a dog in the race, so to speak, and you're still willing to go kill people for money. Essentially, is what Cloud did. But it's fine because his character's all emo. He's not emo, but he's like he's a tortured, conflicted soul, possibly a little bit psychopathic in certain ways, and has some issues. So it's like, okay, like you kind of get to know him a little bit better, and so him going ahead and doing something like that is a little different from like Eris dropping everything and going and bombing a Mako reactor because she decided she had to do something.
It brings to mind for example, like in Skyrim, and I can't remember in Oblivion because I never tried, but I'm assuming it's the same. You can't kill kids in those games. You can't kill them.
Oh, that's right, you can't.
You can kill any adult in the game, basically. And you can ruin a lot of, you can really mess up a lot of storylines and future plot lines and things if you just go killing random people. Which is why it drove me nuts when a dragon would land in the middle of a town and be like, I can't deal with this. He's going to kill somebody before I can kill him. And then you don't know what you're missing out on down the line because this guy's dead and he was going to have the key to something. but you can't kill kids. And so people came out with mods where you could kill kids, and that was where Robaz became pretty big initially. He did a lot of this sounds so bad. Jeez, he did a lot of kid killing videos where you know, because we're going to that slow mo. Yeah. Anyways, when you do a finishing blow in that one of the later,
you grab the people and you're like pounding their face, and they're just like getting shit.
But in that's interesting, and I don't know if that was to get a certain rating or not. But it was already mature, so I'm not even sure. I don't know if there's anything they could have done that would have made it adults only. To be honest. Anyways, it must have just been a moral decision by the developers to be like, we want people to be able to do anything, but we don't want people to be able to kill kids, because that would be like morally like super unacceptable. I think that's.
You know what? I actually have maybe a better example, because we'll talk. Typically, what happens when you go into this whole, like, you know, character has radically different values or ethics from you.
Yeah, we're talking about
you go to violence, right? Yeah, you go to Modern Warfare 2, you're killing a bunch of people. Like, okay, that's the extreme. But maybe on a less extreme end of it, what was it? Assassin's Creed 2 came out when I was.
It was like 2009, 2010.
22, 23 maybe. I was at kind of a funny point in my life, and I didn't like. I don't know. I was attending college, and I was like dating a girl. It was really strange to me, the way that you learn, and I think it's Assassin's Creed 2, but the way you learn the control scheme at the beginning of the game. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This may not be 2. This may be a different Assassin's Creed game, but you're like a 16-year-old kid, and you go out with this girl, and you learn the controls by like you're like making out with this girl, and then you push certain buttons to like take her shirt off.
Oh wait, I don't remember that.
You don't.
I don't remember that.
And then you push other buttons, and I mean, it doesn't get too graphic, but it was enough to make me feel weird about it. Where I actually have not. Okay, I played Assassin's Creed 2 a little bit, but not like really all that much. Yeah. I kind of like got a weird taste in my mouth from that part of the game, and I kind of decided like, I don't really know like where this is going or what this has to do with Assassin's Creed. I would much rather have a different intro to the game than that.
That is roughly how that one starts out, though. I think it is.
Well, because
with that girl, right?
And it was a little weird, and it wasn't like, it's not something that I'm like super opposed to developers doing. Like, whatever, that's fine. But I would say that I personally felt weird doing it.
But you're like
it's not just this happens. It's no, take the girl's shirt off, and I'm like, well, I don't want to, but the game won't go forward unless I do it, and so now I have to do it. And anyways, it was just this like really weird spot for me.
That's freaking funny.
Like if it just happened, I wouldn't care, but the fact that it wanted me to do something to make it happen, just changed the whole thing for me. And that's the whole question of morality. The end result would have been the same, but whether I had an active like hand in it or not is what really kind of like, I don't know, it just turned me off. It's just funny that it turned off because of what you're doing.
We were joking about this before the podcast, that in almost every video game these days, you're someone who kills people, and that's something that like the vast majority, I mean, like essentially everybody out there would be like opposed to doing in real life.
Yes, absolutely.
They would not be willing to kill people, so everyone makes that sort of compromise.
Exactly,
because
this is the assumption. They're bad.
Okay,
they're all bad. Let's kill them.
Yeah, but I was actually thinking of some of the Star Wars games with this, because growing up watching the Star Wars movies, it's like the Stormtroopers, bad. Darth Vader, super bad, except for like eventually he becomes good, and that's cool, but he's bad. And then Emperor, bad, irredeemably bad, like the baddest of all.
Darth Maul's bad.
Darth Maul's bad. They've taken Star Wars a direction, I think, that's a little more ambiguous moving forward. But like initially, aside from Darth Vader, it was like, these are the bad guys and they're so bad, and these are the good guys and they're so good.
Yes.
And so playing some early Star Wars video games where you got to play like as a stormtrooper or
fly the X-wing, the TIE Fighter pilot.
Fly a TIE Fighter.
Yeah, so, that was cool.
Like we had X-wing versus TIE Fighter, and I talked about this recently. But freaking awesome game. One of at least for me, it was one of my absolute favorites. It was a hard game to play because you needed to. It was a flight simulator, and you needed a joystick. And we never actually had a very good joystick. We had the one that suction cupped down instead of it had the weights. Actually, that was our second joystick. I have to say, we had an old Mac.
We had the one that was light gray with 2 buttons. And then
exactly. That was just X-Wing, I think. And we played that on Mac, and it was this janky looking joystick, and we had to run that thing at like lower than 240p. It was such a low resolution, it's ridiculous. We had to turn off all the textures. It was interlaced. We dropped the frame rate as low as it could go, so you'd start doing stuff, and it'd be like, and like it was so hard to play.
Yep.
We ended up getting a PC that was a little better. Played X-Wing versus TIE Fighter on that, and it was so much fun to play TIE Fighter pilot and to shoot X-Wings.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was freaking sick, actually. It was like, dude, this is crazy. I'm working for the bad guys.
Well, and they kind of show that
guys.
A little bit in, like, the newest Star Wars Force Awakens. Who was it? So, the pilot, I can't remember his name.
It starts with a D.
Yeah, he gets into the TIE Fighter, and he's like, I've always wanted to pilot one of these kind of thing. And he's a rebel. He's a resistance pilot, right? He's the dude who's awesome in the X-Wing, and he just kills, like, all...
Dak?
Was it Dak? That kind of sounds familiar, but Dak sounds like from Empire Strikes Back, actually. Wasn't Dak Luke's friend in the back?
Oh, yeah!
Yeah, he gets shot.
Heck, what is his name?
Anyways, the guy, the pilot dude from Episode 7... Yeah, when he gets into the TIE Fighter, he's like, oh, this is the sickest thing ever. I've always wanted to fly one of these. But you never got that feeling in episodes 1 through 6, essentially.
No one was like,
it was like,
I want to fly that.
Yeah, I want to fly the bad guy ship. Oh, that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so finally you kind of get that perspective within Episode 7. That's like, oh, these are, and then also with Finn, of course, questioning his orders. It's like, okay, all of a sudden it's like these stormtroopers are
They're
people,
not all,
right? And they aren't all bad, and everyone doesn't just hate everything about them. And their TIE fighters, oh, I hate those. I'd never fly a TIE fighter. Like,
well, on that point with Star Wars, they mention in Episode 7, maybe we should go back to clones. Like they mention, we're not on clones anymore.
I remember that.
And I think that creates this idea of like,
if they're clones, it's okay to keep
there's
them
some diversity here. Like there could be someone who thinks one way, someone who thinks another way, because they're not clones like they used to be, and you don't feel as bad just shooting random clones of the same guy.
Yeah.
There's a billion of this one guy. That's too many of one person. Come on, get rid of him. You know what I mean? It brings an extra level of humanity to it, I think. It's like, I'm not a clone. I don't know what it's like to be a clone. I don't. Maybe I'm a clone. I have no idea.
Oh,
I can prove that I'm not a clone. But yeah, like you're saying with Finn, he's very human. Starts freaking out about stuff, and then it's true. Like they show the TIE fighters being super mobile in that scene too. They can like turn these really
their
sharp
cannons are really powerful. Yeah. Like the sound they make is more like a bassy, like instead of just the like that weird sound that they have.
Because you always see them from a distance flying in, and
that's true. So you don't hear the impact.
You get in the cockpit
cannons
a couple times, but
yeah.
I love those Star Wars games where you got to be the bad guys. Like I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
and Star Wars kind of embraced that in their video game heritage through like the 90s to the early 2000s at LucasArts with well, not just LucasArts, because I'm actually thinking of Knights of the Old Republic, where you could choose kind of to be good or bad, like or like
now
Jedi
that brings
Academy.
a whole different element to this discussion.
That's true, but they're introducing the idea that like some people want to be the dark side because there's some advantages to being the dark side,
right?
And like they actually gave some legitimacy to being the quote unquote bad guys because they get to do XYZ and they have their own philosophy that makes sense to them, right?
Yeah, they're less limited in certain ways.
Yeah,
that kind of reminds me of how if there was a Harry Potter MMO that ever was to come out, they would have to make Slytherin the most powerful house because no one would want to be.
They'd have to have an advantage to make.
They'd have to have an advantage in some way to counteract the fact that 90% of people are all going to one specific house. They all want to be. They all want to be Gryffindor.
Gryffindor.
You get a few Ravenclaws, but then the Hufflepuffs are left out, and the Slytherins are legitimately the evil class, right? They're the evil house, and so they'd have to do something It's like I took the Pottermore quiz a couple of years ago, and my wife took it. She got Gryffindor. It had like a 1-paragraph thing explaining the valor of the Gryffindor and how great it is. I took it and I got Slytherin, and there was about like 10 paragraphs of like, okay, you might not be happy right now, but hear me out. Okay, Slytherins are actually really cool, and like explaining, just like trying to sell me on the fact that I'm a Slytherin and it's okay to be Slytherin, despite what I wrote in my books. It is okay to be Slytherin. It was actually really funny, but it kind of poses this ethical dilemma. But I have a crazy question. So I played Modern Warfare 2, and I did not want to shoot anyone in the airport.
Right.
I played True Crime Streets of LA, and I drove on the sidewalk, mowing people down, one after the other. Boom, boom. Grand Theft Auto, you know what I'm talking about. And then you bring up choosing to be evil in like Knights of the Old Republic, or maybe Fable, or to maybe a lesser extent Mass Effect. But
kind of.
You can all of a sudden, but you're playing a role, and you accept that. You think, I am a bad guy. Let's do this. Let's be as bad as we can be, right? You would literally nuke a city. Because you're a bad guy, and you're playing the part of a bad guy, and that's okay.
Fallout, you know, in Fallout 3, you get to Megaton, I think it is, and there's a nuke in Megaton, and there's a way that you could freaking set that thing off if you want to.
And people would have no issues doing that in the game. Well, other than maybe it affects your gameplay after that point for some weird reason, or I don't know, but like, people don't have an issue, like what you said, being the TIE fighter shooting on X-Wings, right? No problem, right? Because you are fully embracing your role as a bad person, because that's what you view the other side as. So when you emulate, or when you try to emulate what you think the other side is, you just go full on, and you're like, boom, I am role playing. Whereas Modern Warfare 2, you aren't a bad guy. You're still a good guy. And throughout the narrative of the game and the story, the way it works is you are good. You are doing the right thing. You're fighting the right fight. You aren't a bad person. And so it becomes more difficult to embrace the role as an evil, bad person and to do bad things, because you're not in that mindset. You're not a bad guy. You're not playing that role right now.
You are a conflicted guy.
Exactly. And you literally are, in that sense. You know, according to like Carl Jung and the whole like mirror theory of, you know, when you watch a movie, it's like you're dreaming and these things are actually happening to you, right? And you feel as though the horror alien actually did get to you, and your heart literally stops beating. Okay, I don't know if that happens, but you feel like, what happens when your heart skips a beat? Does your heart really skip a beat, or is it just like this weird
does
feeling?
That's like about taste, like that happens.
There you go. So that's a real effect from something that's not real, right? So that's like Matrix kind of stuff. But in a video game, it's like you're seeing yourself. You know, when you watch a film, you see a representation of yourself in the antagonist. And that's Carl Jung's kind of like idea with his whole like mirror theory, when babies first see a mirror and they recognize that it's them. And it's, anyways, and it connects to your dreams somehow. But the whole point is, in a video game, that's even more pronounced. The whole like idea that you are the person you're controlling. And like, it's just weird. I don't know how much longer. We could talk for a long time about this question.
It's definitely a deep topic.
Deep. But when you're not fully embracing the role of a bad guy, all of a sudden this stuff that wouldn't normally be a problem becomes a problem, because you really do feel as though you're actually doing it to some degree.
That's kind of a theme in like Persona 4, for example, where like you have to face that your characters have good and bad qualities to them, and if you can accept that is just kind of, that's all facets of you, then you know you can become a whole person and move forward.
And that's like rounding out a character, right?
Yeah, the people who reject a specific aspect of themselves and say, no, that's not true, I'm not like that at all. The more they continued, at least in Persona 4 specifically, the more they continued to reject that, the stronger that thing got. And then it wasn't until they were like, you know what, you're right, like, crap, I do this bad stuff, or I think this sometimes, or whatever, and it's just, but that doesn't make me this thing. This is just an aspect of me. Yeah, and it's that Jungian philosophy exactly. That too, which is really,
I feel that Jungian's, like, his ideas, I mean, he's been gone for a long time now, but it ties into video games, like, extremely.
It does. I mean, that's the whole
well.
Persona series is actually based on.
You like Carl Jung philosophy?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so
that's cool.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. Yeah, it's true. Like sometimes it's fun to be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like when it gets too close to reality, that's when it can get conflicting. When it gets too close to your real world politics, when it gets too close to your real world scenario, when it's not fantastical and removed enough, I think it can cause some cognitive dissonance where you're just like, something's telling you don't do this. This is saying something about you.
Even though it's a game.
Even though it's a game.
And even though in Grand Theft Auto you just mow people down whenever you want. You can't do it this time. Right now, it's different. True. And I don't know why, I don't know how, but it's different.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Man. That's funny. Christopher, that was a
really Chris good one, Gwynn, man. Thank you for the question. Gosh.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I mean, it's a great question. Guys, comment on this, actually. This is what I want to hear people's opinions on more than anything. Because when it comes to ethical dilemmas, people really do have, and they can't explain it. They don't know why. Why is it worse for you to push someone off versus pilot the boat and have them fall off? I mean, there's obviously the direct versus indirect cause of them dying, but when you really stop and think about it, it's like, well,
why am
I would actually kind of respect somebody who had the balls to push someone off and go, because I couldn't do it, I wouldn't do it. But if somebody else did it and had that reasoning for it and was able to save, and for whatever reason, it's like, well, geez, man, they just kind of like owned the humanity of their situation, as opposed to trying to justify why it was okay to not have done whatever they did in their mind later on, because whether they would have directly been involved or not. Very interesting stuff. So
crazy. Last one here.
Last question.
Drake Chandler. It's kind of a long one. Drake Chandler says, as Final Fantasy fans, especially those of the older entries in the franchise, should we have followed Sakaguchi to Mistwalker? Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, and The Last Story seem unanimously praised, yet many people are dead set on bashing the later entries of the Final Fantasy franchise more so than going to play the later games of Final Fantasy's actual founding fathers. I personally feel like too many people are simply too attached to the Final Fantasy brand name itself, without understanding what went into those games to make them great. When Final Fantasy disease gets brought up, it's used in a sense that tends to express the fans of Final Fantasy know better than the developers of what Final Fantasy should be. However, maybe the answer only rests in the founding fathers themselves.
And Final Fantasy 1 being the founding document, the Constitution of Final Fantasy.
You cannot alter it. Well, they have altered it, so it's how do you amend Final Fantasy?
Jeez, you gotta get ratification. 2/3 majority.
It's a living game. It's a living game. Yeah. I don't know. We were talking about this a little bit because we were trying to find some parallels to, and we can't find any like really good one-to-one parallels to this scenario.
Not really, but you came up with one that's like close.
There's some kind of close ones. I'm trying to remember the closest one.
I think
one was a hypothetical. So yeah, like. Okay, pick a director that you like. And if you're into film, you probably can name a few that you like. If you're not as into film, it's probably harder to name a few directors.
Okay, we'll tell you. Peter Jackson did Lord of the Rings. Guillermo del Toro did like Pan's Labyrinth and Pacific Rim. And then Steven Spielberg did Jaws and Jurassic Park. It's probably one of those three.
Probably one of those guys. James Cameron, can't discount James Cameron, even though...
There you go. Titanic and Avatar.
A lot of people,
He makes like one movie a decade.
And it's a hit
every single time it makes $1 billion, and holy crap!
If he makes one movie a decade, since they're making like 6 more Avatar movies, does that mean he's gonna live to be 150 years old?
He'll have directed it, but it won't release until well after he's dead. He'll win posthumous Oscars every decade.
So okay, like take a studio whose films you appreciate. Like for me, like I really like Pixar. I think most people really like Pixar. They tend to make a lot of really good films, but it's actually a group of directors. It's not always the same directors.
Right, it's very collaborative.
Yeah, really collaborative, and they change things a lot as the project moves forward. Now, like Final Fantasy and what... Okay, this is a whole freaking sidetrack to this, but I was reading recently that game design hit a point in the late 90s, specifically when things kind of moved towards 3D, that they started adopting Western software development business structure. So like the way Windows was developed as a piece of software would have like a senior, like you have senior and junior positions, right? So you have like a senior developer, and then below them, the junior developers will execute the senior developers' vision. The junior developers are pretty confined to taking what the senior developer had prepped and gotten arranged, and maybe even some tools that the senior developer had provided. The junior developers are going to execute whatever the software is going to be, right? And so that was what was happening in Western software development up to a certain point in their business structure. As video games got bigger and bigger, they started, because early on it was like a director of a video game. What's a director of a video game do?
I know, yeah.
There's no precedence for it at all.
Yeah.
There's no precedence for it. It sounds, we hear it, and we want to say, oh yeah, like a movie director. No, not the same thing. Not the same. And so that was really like ill-defined in those early days. So we talked about so-and-so produced and directed this and that.
Yeah.
But it was, in those early days, most studios were like crazy collaborative with like so-and-so was a character designer, but then all of a sudden they designed the battle system for the next game or what, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they were pretty interchangeable.
People jumping all over the place, really interdisciplinary type personalities, people that were good at more than one thing. And then you hit about 1998, 1999, late 90s, where all of a sudden things got big enough, the money was big enough that they needed to like have like some surefire methods for production. And so like the way that like software was being developed up to that point started to get adopted by all these other video game companies, which in some ways stifled creativity, but also started to give regimented roles from that point on.
So it's more specialized.
Yeah. And so what you had before, the way teams worked, depending on the company, is not the same as teams ended up working like 10, 15, 20 years later. So when we talk about how early Final Fantasy games were developed, the team structure that Square Enix employs now on Final Fantasy games isn't the same as what it was for like Final Fantasy 4, for example, or 3. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't the same. So while there's still creators and and designers, character designers, and these roles that we recognize today, the way they interacted with each other wasn't the same, right? It wasn't the same. And so that's a whole sidetrack to say that the roles of the like quote unquote creators of Final Fantasy were what they were, but they may have been benefiting early on from a greater degree of collaboration and cross-disciplinary kind of like interaction between programmers and artists and writers than is now occurring in Final Fantasy games, for example. You know what I mean? And so what we can look back to and attribute as, oh, this was because so-and-so was the director at this point in time, could very well be that, well, they implemented business structures and a regimented structure to control costs that doesn't allow for a lot of the same things they actually used to do.
Interesting.
With smaller teams and that sort of thing.
And in some ways that can have an even bigger impact than whoever the one director was.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's like a theory as to explaining like why like Hironobu Sakaguchi leaving 2001-ish after 12, right?
It was right before 12.
Right before 12.
It was because 12 took a long time to get developed. It was after 10.
Okay, so it was right in there, 2001, 2002. Anyways. No, because 12 came out when I was in Japan.
Yeah, 12 was out in
2005,
2006.
2006.
Yeah. He might have been fired right before 10, actually, but it was around like 2001.
Yeah.
It was after Kingdom Hearts, I remember.
Yeah.
So it might have been after 10. It was probably after 10.
Probably after 10.
Yeah.
So that is a complete, that's like an unprovable theory that, explains why like Shigeru Miyamoto may have been a better game designer in the early 90s and late 80s than like he technically is now. I'm not saying, but you know what I mean? It's hard to draw apples to apples even with the same people. Yeah. You can say like this guy had a different context and he did it like Shigeru Miyamoto, when they interviewed him like working on Super Mario World, I think it was, like he's just in a cubicle with everybody else down on the main floor.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think that has changed a heck of a lot, but that showed you what the setting was. It was like, it was a super flat business structure.
Yeah.
In some ways, Japanese businesses are still very hierarchical.
Oh, very much.
But you know what I mean? Like everyone was figuring out, what does it mean to make a video game? How does this work?
True.
How do you make a video game?
Yeah.
How do you do this? How do you make it consistently good?
Well, this guy seems to kind of know what he's talking about. Yeah, just take it like little by little.
So,
as far as like the specific games that Sakaguchi ended up making
after he left,
like they're good games. I haven't like played more than a couple hours of any of these, of Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, or Last Story, but like they're cool. They seem really cool as far as what I can tell. It is interesting to be more loyal to something named Final Fantasy versus something that was created by the director or the producer of something, especially for a video game.
Yeah.
The name, I mean, marketing is always about brand, right?
Yeah,
and Sakaguchi didn't have a brand. I didn't even know he went and started Mistwalker until like Last Story was coming out. I didn't know that Lost Odyssey was done by the director of Final Fantasy. I never heard of Blue Dragon ever until like a year ago. And so like it wasn't until Last Story came out and I was like, oh, the guy who made Final Fantasy is doing this thing, and he called it Last Story. Go figure, Final and Last, and then Fantasy and Story. It's just like, okay, he's doing the same thing, right? I thought that was kind of funny, honestly. It may be a little bit sad, but apparently it's a really good game. I know Mike likes it. And that's a good point about how it's like better received critically than the Final Fantasy games. But at the same time, like, why not be a fan of both, I guess? Like, you can still follow Mistwalker and do whatever they're doing in their phone ventures and all that now, and you can also still follow Final Fantasy for many of the characters, like Tetsuya Nomura, who was brought on since like Final Fantasy IV. He's obviously still doing things in Square Enix and helping make Final Fantasy games. A lot of the original guys like Hiroyuki Ito and Yoshinori Kitase, they're still with the company. So even though the father of it left, it wouldn't be unfair to say, well, let's just kind of follow where both of these go. And I'd say at this point, it's clear that Final Fantasy is able to survive very well without its creator, and the creator is not able to survive super, super perfectly well without the name. And so when you look at those two, it's like, I don't know exactly what conclusion you would draw there. Sakaguchi's doing fine. It's not like he's broke or anything. He's making phone games and making tons of money, I'm sure. But he's not doing what he used to do, and he's not making games on that scale anymore. Whereas the Final Fantasy games are still selling millions of copies, even when they're not critically acclaimed. So just follow both. There's no reason to limit your fandom to just one thing,
Well, actually, okay, yeah. So I brought this up and I didn't continue down the path, but Pixar.
Oh, right?
All the directors of Pixar.
Yeah.
So like two directors as examples. Like one, we were talking about this, Andrew Stanton. So he went on and he directed John Carter of Mars.
Yes.
Right. So he was a very critically acclaimed director at Pixar, but he went on to do his first live action. And it was John Carter with a massive, massive, massive budget. It was a Disney production, and it was one of the biggest flops in like film history.
Yeah, Disney was pretty
it lost a lot of money, a lot of money. And so you would say, well, what about these people that cared about Andrew Stanton as a director and would have gone to see his next Pixar movie? I'm drawing a blank right now on Andrew Stanton did you do WALL-E?
Incredibles?
No, Brad Bird did Incredibles.
So if he did WALL-E, then he also did he do Finding Nemo and WALL-E?
Yes, he did do Finding Nemo. That's right.
Yeah,
Andrew
which
Stanton
is one of the best movies ever.
He did
WALL-E, awesome.
Yeah, he did WALL-E, and then he did John Carter. But obviously he's been with them since Toy Story. But Andrew Stanton, great director. But you could say, where were all the Pixar fans that didn't follow him to go see John Carter?
Right.
And it's because the role of director is not that visible, even in movies. Even when you say the word director, people think of a movie director versus any other kind of director. Like, for example, like a video game director.
Yeah.
People don't tend to coalesce around those personalities, and to be honest, like people talk about like Hideo Kojima and people coalescing around him right now with his new with Death Stranding.
He does have a brand.
He has a brand.
He's building his own brand.
it's easy to forget that the number of people who play video games versus the number of people who regularly read about video games and are into this kind of discussion stuff, it's a small fraction of the people. You know, I would be willing to say that it's less than a quarter of people, if not, you know, just 10% of people that are that hardcore enough to know who the directors are and who did this and who did the concept art and all this stuff. And so when you're way into it, that's what you get into, and you start thinking everyone's excited about this guy or everyone knows about this guy, but it's like in your circles everyone does, but in the greater, you know, mass market, which is what matters.
Exactly.
Are they that visible? Are they that visible? Like Peter Jackson, who directed the Lord of the Rings films, was billed on I think it was King Kong.
Yeah, he did.
It was like Peter Jackson, or from the director of like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
They're still not even saying his name,
and bad taste.
That doesn't because that doesn't carry the same like interest.
It's true. You've got to say the name of the thing he did, not his name.
Yeah. So there's very few people that have that. Steven Spielberg is one. You can say produced by Steven Spielberg, and it's like, oh dang, I love Steven Spielberg. What a great guy! Like I love E.T. I love Jurassic Park.
There you go.
Like I love Saving Private Ryan, and you can go like, I'll watch a Steven Spielberg thing. But yeah, it just people's names that are behind the scenes production type people don't tend to draw enough in a marketing sense for it to matter that much. So while it does matter that you can say this is a game made by the guy who created Final Fantasy, but it doesn't. If you were to say this is made by Hironobu Sakaguchi, it doesn't do the same thing. And so what we're saying there is that Final Fantasy is worth this. Hironobu Sakaguchi as a name is worth this. And marketing is like more than half of what decides all this crap. And so that's,
and the budgets indicate that people spend so much on marketing after development. It's insane.
So
yeah.
And okay, there are like with Walt Disney, like if you go to Disneyland, you're going to see a Mickey Mouse, you're going to see a Minnie Mouse, you're going to see a Pluto and a Goofy and a Donald Duck. But what was the last time anyone actually watched a cartoon or a movie that had any of those characters in it?
It's been a long time since I've seen a Mickey Mouse film.
Yeah, really long time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like people,
crazy.
Those things are rooted in popular culture now to a point where it's just part of the fabric of Disney, and so people are going to keep caring about that no matter what happens from this point on. Really, they're entrenched in that way, and I would say a lot of aspects of Final Fantasy carry that same weight to them. Chocobos, even there being a chocobo at all. Moogles.
Yeah, chocobo.
Yeah, well, a lot of the names of potions and things like that, and summons and all that, even though they're from mythology, they carry a weight to them that if they're there at all, it's like seeing Donald Duck at Disneyland. Like, I haven't watched a Donald Duck anything since like DuckTales, although they do a reboot of DuckTales.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard, yes.
But I haven't cared about any Donald Duck anything, but if I see Donald Duck at Disney, I'm like, freak yeah, dude.
That's Donald Duck. A photo, dude.
Like that's
same
awesome.
thing with Chippendale.
Chippendale's Rescue Rangers.
Rescue Rangers, that's it. Yeah, I saw them at Disney World when I was there last. It's sweet. We got some photos. It was fun. I haven't seen those movies in over 20 years.
That's true.
They haven't made one in over 20 years, and that's fine, you know. But
that
the name is still there.
Yeah, and that recognition is what is getting you excited. And so I think like when when people talk about, oh, I'm excited to be able to ride a chocobo in Final Fantasy 15, it's like there's nothing Hironobu Sakaguchi could create in and of himself in his own game that would get a random person like, oh, no way, we're gonna get to ride
an ostrich.
An ostrich? Sick. No matter what you call it.
I mean, that is sick, but it's not the same. Yeah.
Right. It's not. There's something to that. It's sad, and I'm not saying that this is right or anything. But
it's just how it is.
It's the way people work. People can only pay attention to so much crap in their life.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean? Like, people are overwhelmed. And so when they go like, dude, I always loved like seeing those Moogles in Final Fantasy VI. Seeing a Moogle in anything else, even if it's just a stuffed doll Moogle they're throwing around in Final Fantasy 15, it's like, oh, Moogles, it takes me back. But a picture of Hironobu Sakaguchi, you're not going to be like, man, dude, I freaking loved this guy when I was a kid. And there are people like that, but it's such a small sliver of people that, it's too bad. It's too bad that people aren't getting the recognition they need, but too many people go into making video games and movies. You know?
Yeah, it's hundreds now. You'd stay for the credits and watch and try and read all the names, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I remember we beat Star Fox, and we were and this is only this kind of goes into what you're saying. Yeah, Super NES. There was someone named Yoshi, who, and I don't remember his full name anymore at all, but we realized the person named Yoshi was also in the credits of Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, and possibly another game I can't remember, but just the name Yoshi was funny because Yoshi, right?
Yeah.
We didn't know anything about Japanese or how common of a name Yoshi or Yoshihiru or anything like that is. But we knew the name because we saw it in the credits and it stood out to us because it was the name of a branded character that Nintendo has marketed for years, right?
Yeah.
And that was why that name stood out. Like, there are so many names. Even back then, there weren't that many, though. But, like, I don't remember most of them. I remember Shigeru Miyamoto. We always saw his name. That was easy. But then other than this dude named Yoshi something, who we were always like, oh, look, he made this game, too. Like, I don't know names. I just, if there's two, I don't know. I just don't know who made any
too many. Way too many.
Yeah.
So, while there are people that are more important, or people that you can say, this guy created such and such, a lot of those guys are getting old now.
I have an idea. And this will not happen, unfortunately. But what if George Lucas came up with a new world? Like a new space, futuristic-centered world, right? And I know Star Wars takes place in the past. That's not the point. It's still futuristic, even if it happened a long, long time ago. So what if he did that? Like, would it possibly... No matter what he does, can it possibly overtake Star Wars?
Oh, that's actually a really, really good point.
Even if he made the sweetest movie ever, right? Like, ever. Like, let's say he made Avatar or something like that. Avatar's not even close to Star Wars, man.
Right.
I mean, it may have made more money than like Rogue One or something. I get that. Avatar made like $1 billion. But the recognition and the utility of the name Avatar versus Star Wars, it's not even close. Star Wars freaking owns Avatar in like brand recognition. Like, I don't think George Lucas could do it for multiple reasons. Not only do I not think he could do it because maybe he just can't do it, but I also don't think he could do it even if it was prime George Lucas in his 40s in 1980. I don't think he could do it, and that's the craziest thing. That, like, I love George Lucas, but I will see all the Star Wars movies that are coming out, and I might see James Cameron's new Avatar, or whatever else is happening. I don't know, but there are few guarantees in my life. Me watching the next Star Wars movie is a guarantee for basically the rest of my life.
Even though
it's a guarantee,
unless they no one working on it, but like John Knoll has anything to do with George Lucas.
Yeah, Star Wars. No one who was originally
Kathleen
involved.
Kennedy and
but who else? The sound guy, though, I think he's the same. I can't remember. He did WALL-E as well. But yeah, there's a few people. But yeah, no one's the same, but it's Star Wars, and I will always watch it. I can't say the same for, almost anything.
Well, and that's where you get to the idea of like a created work taking on a life of its own beyond the life of the creator. Something that transcends just, which is why like patents can become or trademarks can become a tricky thing. Like Mickey Mouse is so valuable, even though Walt Disney's long gone.
They haven't made a Mickey Mouse movie in a long time. And Walt Disney's gone.
But Disney isn't going to allow the trademark law to kick into a point where Mickey Mouse is ever public domain, because Mickey Mouse is worth so much, regardless of if it's a Walt Disney animated, like Walt Disney as in the Walt Disney the person animated Mickey Mouse anything. People don't care about that. They don't care about
it's
that.
Mickey Mouse.
I think that to some degree, a lot of people understand that art is collaborative, and they're more just concerned about the final product. They don't care what had to happen to get it there. Like Jackie Chan always says, nobody cares that it was raining on set and that you had to do like 200 takes to get that thing right. No one in the theater is sitting there going, that didn't look right, but you know what? They were probably rushed that day. That was really rough. Like, people don't think that way. They just care about the final product.
Exactly. And if it's not up to what they are expecting, then they're going to be upset.
So, unfortunately, brand name can compensate a little bit for that. So you can have some bad Final Fantasies before you really, really lose people. And it might be impossible to totally lose people, because there's always going to be people that are going to look to that stuff and be like, that's something from my childhood. And
Yeah.
like, I love Mickey Mouse, even though there could be a crap Mickey Mouse movie and it would make me love Mickey Mouse even more.
No, that's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
if I watched a Mickey Mouse movie that wasn't good, that doesn't matter. Mickey Mouse is Mickey Mouse. And you wear the hat, you wear the ear hat when you go to not McDonald's. I said McDonald's.
I thought you were gonna say Mick Disney.
When you go to Disneyland, anyways.
Holy
it just doesn't matter.
We've gotten all rambly, but the fact of the matter is that Hironobu Sakaguchi's getting old. Shigeru Miyamoto is getting old. I'm trying to think of some of the other real bit. There's some young guys. There's like I mean, Kojima's not as old.
He's not terribly old.
Yeah, some of these guys, like, they're not going to be around that much longer, and it's almost going to be a moot point at some point. But the companies are going to keep carrying on whatever they do.
Yeah,
so.
and that's just as well. I will play every Zelda after Miyamoto retires from Nintendo. I will continue to play the Zelda games because he's already been slowly
not really
hands off. Yeah. So that's really smart to do a transition like that. But either way, I'm not playing it because of him. It's just kind of weird. It's weird when you think about it because it's like, just because someone owns the right to the game means that that's the game you're going to play now. It's like they have power over you. And some people don't like that. But it's true, they do.
It's just how crap works. Like we bought so many Star Wars video games because it said Star Wars.
Yeah.
And we didn't know very much about some of them. But it was like, but it's Star Wars, dude.
It's Star Wars.
I love Star Wars.
When you talk about like what DLC episode would we add on to our favorite game, or whatever, Star Wars, dude. Give me more Star Wars. The Star Wars games were like DLC to the movie.
They kind of
like, oh, figure out more about the world.
Yeah.
Go explore the universe some more.
Yeah. And you know what? Funny thing, as crappy of a game as Shadows of the Empire is, for the most part.
We played it so much.
We played it a lot, but it never bothered me that it wasn't a story written by George Lucas, and it wasn't a character created by George Lucas or anything.
That's true.
But it was still like, I don't care. Like, give me any Star Wars stuff I can get. So I guess we keep coming back to Star Wars. That's a good comparison for Final Fantasy, but
which is a compliment to Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Right. They're relatively comparable.
Yeah. So, well, Drake, that probably wasn't satisfactory enough answer.
Sorry,
but
you good point. Why didn't people follow him to Mistwalker? I don't know, but at the same time, it's like that's not how. This
but you know,
works
if there was an internal dispute at Weta Digital and Peter Jackson's like, I'm gonna go start making movies without the rest of you Weta guys. You keep doing your Weta thing, and I'm gonna make other movies over here. And
that's a more interesting comparison.
The fact of the matter is, people don't care that much. What's the movie?
Right, exactly.
You know, well, if Weta still has the rights to any Lord of the Rings stuff, then people are sticking there.
Then that's what they're going to watch, exactly. But if Peter Jackson takes that with him, and then ILM helps make the Silmarillion into a movie, then people are going to watch that, and
it's
not
tough.
Whatever Weta
It's
does.
a little disingenuous of a comparison because Peter Jackson didn't create Lord of the Rings. Like, if it was J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, guys, trust us. We're big fans, even though we're saying may sound a little casual. We're big little Tolkien fans who know all this stuff.
Jeez.
All right, Drake Chandler, good question, and I believe we're drawing to a close. This podcast is just about run its course.
Yep.
You guys are awesome. Watch all of our videos.
Yeah.
Gosh, how do you
check us out. Check us out. YouTube Gaming. Not YouTube Gaming. Just go to YouTube. YouTube Gaming. It's all right.
If you like the dark colors.
If you want it to be a dark theme.
But it's too dark.
But didn't they add a dark theme to YouTube? That
you they did recently. They did.
But yeah, look us up. Dark Pixel Gaming on YouTube, or Dark Pixel. Podcast is a Dark Pixel Gaming.
Yep. And you can also listen to this podcast audio only if you want to. We got some links in the description. You guys are beasts.
All right. We'll see you next Wednesday. See you later.